Victoria Cross grabbed the intern by his collar and slammed him against the wall of her corner office, 23 floors above Los Angeles, with a view that cost more than most people's homes. She held him there like he weighed nothing. "Say that again," she whispered. The intern's voice shook. "Someone bought Starlight Kingdom, a woman. She bought it 3 days ago, and the motion sensors in the vault triggered last night at 2:47 a.m. Victoria released him. He crumpled to the floor, gasping. She walked to her desk, picked up a crystal paperweight shaped like a castle, and hurled it through the window. Glass exploded outward. Wind screamed into the room. The intern scrambled backward, terrified. 43 years. Victoria's voice was calm now, which was somehow worse. 43 years I've been guarding that secret. I've destroyed careers. I've bankrupted families. I've done things that would make you vomit. And now some random woman just walks in and finds it. She turned to face him. Her eyes were empty, dead, the eyes of someone who had stopped being human a long time ago. Find out everything about her, name, history, weaknesses, and send a team to Georgia tonight. She smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing the intern had ever seen. I don't care if she's pregnant. I don't care if she's Mother Teresa. That vault contains something that can destroy this company, and I will burn her life to ashes before I let her share it with the world. But Victoria Cross had made a fatal mistake. She had underestimated what a desperate woman with nothing left to lose was capable of doing. Before we continue this incredible story, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Watch until the very end, because what happens next will leave you breathless. And comment below telling us which city you're watching from. We love seeing how far our stories reach. Now let's begin. The call came at 6:47 in the morning on a Tuesday in March. Sarah Mitchell would remember that detail for the rest of her life. Not the words, not the officer's name. Just the time glowing on her phone screen while her world collapsed around her. She had been awake for hours already. That was pregnancy for you, 7 months along, and sleep had become a cruel joke her body played on her every night. She lay in bed, hand on her belly, feeling her daughter kick against her palm. Strong kicks, angry kicks, like the baby knew something was wrong before Sarah did. The phone buzzed. She grabbed it, expecting Daniel's voice. He'd been working late again, probably passed out at his desk, surrounded by coffee cups and character sketches. Her husband lived in that animation studio more than he lived at home these days. Mrs. Mitchell, a stranger's voice. Official, the kind of voice that delivered news nobody wanted to hear. Yes. This is Officer Rodriguez, Georgia State Patrol. Ma'am, there's been an accident on Interstate 85. Your husband Daniel was involved. Sarah sat up too fast. The room spun. Blood rushed to her head and left it just as quickly. What hospital is he okay? Tell me which hospital. The pause lasted 3 seconds. Sarah counted them. 1, 2, 3. In those 3 seconds, she understood everything. She understood before the words came. But she needed to hear them anyway. Ma'am, I'm very sorry. Your husband was pronounced dead at the scene. He died on impact. There was no suffering. Sarah didn't make a sound. Her hand found her belly. Inside, the baby kicked hard once, twice, then went still. As if she knew. As if she felt her mother's heart stop beating. Mrs. Mitchell, are you there? Is there someone who can be with you? She ended the call. She didn't remember doing it. One moment the officer was talking, and the next moment silence filled the bedroom like water filling a drowning person's lungs. Daniel was dead. Her husband. Her best friend. The father of her child. The man who had held her just 2 nights ago, his ear pressed to her stomach, laughing when the baby kicked his cheek. She's going to be a soccer player, he had said. Feel that leg strength. She's going to be an artist like her daddy. Why not both a soccer-playing artist? The world's first. They had laughed. They had made love. They had talked about baby names until 3 a.m. And now he was dead on a highway somewhere, and Sarah was alone in a bed that still smelled like him. She walked to the bathroom. Her legs moved without her permission. She turned on the shower. She stepped inside, fully clothed. The water was cold at first, then scalding, but she didn't adjust it. She just sank to the floor of the tub, let the water pour over her pregnant body, and screamed until her throat bled. The funeral happened on a day Sarah barely remembered. People came. People she didn't know. Daniel's co-workers from the studio, distant relatives, neighbors carrying casseroles like food could fix grief. They all said the same things. He was so young. What a tragedy, if there's anything we can do. Sarah smiled and nodded and thanked them because that's what widows did. They performed for an audience while the real grief sat inside them, like a tumor growing larger every day. Daniel's mother found her after the service. Eleanor Mitchell was a woman carved from ice and disappointment. In 6 years of marriage, she had never once told Sarah she was good enough for her son. Now she stood in the church hallway, perfectly composed, while Sarah's mascara ran down her cheeks like black rivers. "We need to discuss Daniel's affairs." Eleanor's voice carried all the warmth of a legal document. "Can it wait? I buried my husband 4 hours ago." "It cannot." Eleanor pressed a manila envelope into Sarah's hands. The paper felt heavy, wrong, like it contained something poisonous. "The lawyer will explain the details, but you should prepare yourself. My son made certain decisions that affect us all." "What decisions?" Eleanor was already walking away. She didn't offer condolences. She didn't mention the grandchild growing in Sarah's belly. She simply delivered her message and left her heels clicking against the church floor like a countdown to disaster. Sarah opened the envelope at midnight. She sat alone in the living room of the house she thought she owned, surrounded by sympathy cards she couldn't bring herself to read. The baby pressed against her bladder. Her back ached, her feet were swollen, and the documents in that envelope were about to make everything worse. The first page explained that Daniel had taken a second mortgage on their home 3 years ago. Amount $287,000. Purpose business investment. Sarah read it 3 times. Her hands shook so badly the paper rattled. 3 years. For 3 years her husband had hidden this from her. Every morning when he kissed her goodbye, every night when he came home exhausted, every time he said the studio was struggling but they'd make it work, he had been lying. The second page listed additional debts. Credit cards maxed to their limits, personal loans from banks she'd never heard of, a line of credit from Eleanor that had never been repaid. Total debt, $412,000. Against this debt, their only asset was the house. Current value, according to the attached appraisal, $380,000. Sarah did the math. Then she did it again because the numbers made no sense. After selling the house and paying the debts, she would have approximately $18,000. The life insurance policy she'd been counting on had been cashed out 2 years ago. There was nothing left, no savings, no safety net, nothing. She was 7 months pregnant with no husband, no home, and $18,000 between her and the street. Sarah walked to the nursery, the room she and Daniel had spent months preparing. Yellow walls because they wanted it bright and happy. A white crib he'd assembled himself, cursing at the instructions while she laughed. A mobile of cartoon characters spinning slowly over the mattress, characters Daniel had designed himself. "For our little dreamer," he'd said proudly. "She'll fall asleep looking at Daddy's creations." Sarah sank into the rocking chair. She rocked back and forth, staring at those cartoon characters spinning in the dark. Her husband had lied to her, for years, about everything that mattered, and now she would pay the price for his secrets. The baby kicked, hard, almost painful. "I know," Sarah whispered. "I'm scared too." The bank sent a man named Kenneth Vogel 3 days later. He had soft hands and a softer voice, the practiced gentleness of someone who ruined lives professionally. He spread documents across Sarah's kitchen table like he was dealing cards in a game she had already lost. "First, my condolences for your loss." "Thank you?" The words tasted like ash. "I wish I were here under better circumstances." He didn't look at her when he said it. He was already scanning his papers, finding the numbers that would destroy her. "Your husband's mortgage payment stopped 4 months ago. We've sent notices, but they were returned unopened." Sarah's coffee cup froze halfway to her mouth. 4 months. "According to our records, yes. The notices went to a P.O. box registered in your husband's name." Vogel finally met her eyes. "Mrs. Mitchell, the bank has been patient, but we've reached the end of that patience. You have 30 days to pay $47,000 in arrears. Failing that, foreclosure begins." Sarah laughed. It came out broken jagged, not really a laugh at all. $47,000. Sure, let me check behind the couch cushions. Vogel shifted uncomfortably. "I understand this is difficult. Do you—" Sarah leaned forward, her belly pressed against the table edge. Her back screamed at the position, but she didn't care. "Do you understand what it's like to be 7 months pregnant, barely able to tie your own shoes, and find out your dead husband spent 3 years lying to your face? Do you understand what it's like to have $18,000 to your name and a baby coming in 2 months? Tell me, Mr. Vogel, do you understand any of that?" He wouldn't meet her eyes. "I'm just the messenger." "Then take a message back to your bank. You can have this house. Take every piece of furniture, every memory, every damn thing in it. But you will not break me. I will find a way to survive this. I don't know how yet, but I will find a way." Vogel gathered his papers quickly. "You'll receive formal notification within 5 days. I truly am sorry, Mrs. Mitchell." He let himself out. Sarah listened to his car pull away. Then she walked to the kitchen sink, gripped the edge until her knuckles went white, and threw up everything she'd eaten that day. The baby kicked anxiously against her belly. "It's okay?" Sarah gasped between heaves. "Mama's okay. We're going to be okay." She didn't believe it. Not yet. The next 2 weeks stripped away everything Sarah thought she knew about herself. She sold Daniel's car to a dealer who smelled like cigarettes and looked at her pregnant belly like it was a negotiating weakness. He offered $6,500. She argued. He pointed out the dent in the rear fender, the worn tires, the miles on the odometer. She took $7,200 and felt like she'd lost anyway. She sold her jewelry at a pawn shop run by a woman with kind eyes and ruthless business sense. The engagement ring Daniel had proposed with the one she'd worn for 6 years brought $2,800. Sarah cried in the parking lot for 20 minutes before she could drive home. She held a yard sale on a Saturday morning watching strangers paw through the remains of her life. A woman argued over the price of Daniel's favorite coffee mug. A man offered $5 for the lamp from their bedroom. Children ran through the piles of clothes, their mothers yanking them back, glancing at Sarah's belly with that particular mix of pity and relief that said, "Thank God it's her and not me." Total take $1, $847. She applied for jobs. 14 applications sent out to anyone who might hire her. Administrative assistant, receptionist, data entry. She wasn't picky, she just needed income. 6 interviews followed. 6 times she put on her only maternity dress, drove to offices with her back aching and her ankles swollen, smiled at hiring managers who stared at her belly like it was a bomb about to explode. "We'll be in touch," they all said. None of them were. She called family. Her father was dead gone since she was 12. Her mother had remarried 3 years ago, moved to Portugal with a man named Victor, who made it clear Sarah was not welcome in their new life. Her sister hadn't spoken to her in 5 years over a fight about money that neither of them could remember starting. She was alone. Completely, utterly, impossibly alone. The night before the bank's deadline, Sarah sat in her empty living room at 2 a.m. with her laptop open and her last hope dying. She had $16,947. Not enough for first and last month's rent on an apartment. Not enough for a security deposit. Not enough to start over anywhere. She scrolled through real estate listings without knowing why. Maybe she wanted to see what kind of homes cost $16,000. Maybe she wanted to torture herself with pictures of the life she would never have. Maybe she just needed something to do besides cry. The listing appeared at the bottom of page 47 of a property auction site she'd never heard of. Condemned amusement park, 52 acres, castle structure, $15,000, oboe, seller motivated. Sarah stopped scrolling. The photos loaded slowly. Rusted gates wrapped in dead vines. Overgrown pathways disappearing into wilderness. A roller coaster track twisted against gray sky like a metal skeleton, and at the center, rising through morning mist, a castle. Not a Disney castle, something stranger, gothic and beautiful and heartbreaking. Turrets reached toward clouds like hands grasping for heaven. Windows stared out like empty eyes. Ivy crawled up stone walls, nature slowly consuming what humans had abandoned. Starlight Kingdom, closed 1979. All structures as is, serious inquiries only. Sarah stared at the photos for a long time. Something about that castle called to her, something irrational, something desperate. Her finger moved to the contact button before her brain could stop it. "I'm interested in the property. Is it still available?" She hit send. The response came in 43 seconds. "Yes, call this number, now." Sarah dialed. Her heart hammered against her ribs. The baby kicked once hard like she was urging her mother on. "Hello?" An old woman's voice. Southern accent, trembling with age but sharp underneath. "This is Sarah Mitchell. I sent a message about Starlight Kingdom." Silence, then, "I know who you are." Sarah's blood went cold. "Excuse me?" "I've been waiting for you, child, for a very long time." "How do you know my name? Who are you?" "My name is Dorothy Price, and the park has been waiting. 43 years it's been waiting. You're the first person to hear it calling." A pause. 15,000 is the price. I'll take 12 if that's easier." "Mrs. Price, I haven't even seen the property. I don't understand what's happening. How can you possibly—" "The questions don't matter right now. What matters is that you found it. What matters is that you're exactly who you're supposed to be." Dorothy's voice softened. "You've lost everything, haven't you? Your husband, your home, your faith that the world makes sense." Sarah couldn't breathe. "How do you know that—" "Because that's who the park chooses. The broken ones. The desperate ones. The ones with nothing left. Another pause. There's something hidden there, Sarah. Something that was meant to be found by someone exactly like you. I can't tell you what it is. I can only tell you that it will change everything. You're not making sense. No, I'm not. But you're going to buy this park anyway, aren't you, because you have nowhere else to go, because something in those pictures spoke to you, because you're out of options and out of hope, and the only thing left is a rusted castle in the middle of Georgia that's been waiting for you since before you were born. Sarah should have hung up, should have dismissed this crazy old woman and her cryptic nonsense. But she thought about Daniel's sketchbook on the nightstand, the one filled with drawings of characters and worlds that existed only in his imagination. On the last page, dated 1 week before his death, he had drawn a castle. Gothic turrets, empty windows, ivy climbing stone walls. Under the drawing, he had written, "Find the door, find the dream." 12,000, Sarah whispered. "Wire it tomorrow. The deed will be yours by noon." Dorothy's voice cracked. "And Sarah, whatever you find under that castle, it was always meant to be yours. Guard it well." The line went dead. Sarah sat in the darkness, her laptop glowing, her heart pounding, her baby kicking, as if celebrating a decision her mother hadn't consciously made yet. She wired the money at 9:15 the next morning. The deed arrived in her email at 11:47 a.m., along with a hand-drawn map showing the route from Atlanta to the property. By 3 p.m., Sarah Mitchell had packed her entire life into a rental trailer attached to her aging Honda Civic. Clothes, photo albums, camping gear, canned food, a sleeping bag rated for cold weather, Daniel's sketchbook. Everything she owned fit in a space smaller than the nursery she was leaving behind. She pulled out of the driveway at 3:17 p.m. She didn't look back. There was nothing to look back at. The house belonged to the bank now. Her old life belonged to a woman who no longer existed. The drive took 7 hours. 7 hours of empty highway and small towns and radio stations that faded in and out like dying memories. 7 hours of talking to her belly, telling her unborn daughter about the adventure ahead. "I know this seems crazy, little one. Your mama is driving to an abandoned theme park in the middle of nowhere because a strange old woman told her to. But here's the thing about crazy. Sometimes crazy is the only option left. Sometimes you have to jump off the cliff and trust that something will catch you on the way down." The baby kicked in response. Strong, certain, like she understood. The sun was bleeding orange across the horizon when Sarah finally saw the sign. Starlight Kingdom, 2 miles. The road hadn't been maintained in decades. Potholes deep enough to swallow the car, fallen branches scraping against the undercarriage. The Honda groaned and protested and somehow kept moving forward. Then the gates appeared. Massive iron structures 15 feet tall designed to look like castle doors. They hung open, hinges rusted solid, frozen in mid-welcome. Beyond them, the park spread out in dying light. Sarah stopped the car and stared. The ticket booth stood like abandoned guard posts. Pathways disappeared under 40 years of overgrowth. Carousel horses rotted on a platform surrounded by weeds. A Ferris wheel loomed against the darkening sky, its cars hanging at impossible angles ready to fall at any moment. And at the center of it all, the castle. It was more beautiful in person than in the photos. More tragic, more alive. The stone walls had weathered 4 decades but still stood proud. The turrets reached toward the first stars appearing overhead. The windows caught the last light of sunset and held it burning orange and gold and red. Sarah got out of the car. The evening air was warm and thick with the smell of earth and growing things. Crickets sang their nightly chorus. Somewhere in the distance an owl called out. She walked toward the castle. Her belly was heavy, her back ached, her feet throbbed inside worn sneakers. But she kept walking. "I'm here," she said softly. "Whatever you're hiding, whatever you've been waiting for, I'm here." The wind picked up, rustled through overgrown gardens. For just a moment, Sarah could have sworn she heard music. Faint, distant, the echo of a carousel melody that had been silent for 40 years. Then silence returned. The castle loomed above her patient as stone ancient as dreams. Sarah placed her hand on the cold wall. "Show me," she whispered. "Show me what you've been guarding all these years." The night answered with silence. But somewhere in the darkness something shifted. Something stirred. Something that had been sleeping for 4 decades began to wake. Sarah didn't know it yet, but she had just set something in motion that couldn't be stopped. The first night was brutal. Sarah made camp in the old administration building, the only structure with a roof that didn't look ready to collapse. She swept away debris with a broken broom she found in a corner. She spread her sleeping bag on the cleanest patch of floor she could find. She ate cold beans straight from the can because she was too exhausted to set up the camp stove. The baby wouldn't stop moving, kicking, squirming, pressing against her bladder until Sarah had to stumble outside 3 times to relieve herself in darkness that felt alive with watching eyes. At 2 a.m., footsteps crunched on gravel outside. Sarah grabbed the knife she'd packed and pressed herself against the wall. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. The baby went still as if she knew danger was near. The footsteps grew closer, stopped right outside the door. "I know you're in there, child." Dorothy Price's voice, old and thin but clear. "Come out. We need to talk." Sarah's hand shook on the knife. "How did you get here?" "I drove, same as you, though my old bones don't handle dirt roads like they used to." A dry chuckle. "Are you going to come out, or should I come in?" Sarah opened the door. Dorothy stood in the moonlight, small and frail, leaning on a wooden cane. She wore a faded dress that might have been elegant 50 years ago. Her white hair was pinned back in a style that belonged to another era. "You came," Dorothy said. "Good. I wasn't sure you would." "Why are you here?" "Because it's time. After all these years, it's finally time." Dorothy gestured toward the castle. "Walk with me. There's something you need to see." They walked in silence through the ruins of Starlight Kingdom, past the rotting carousel, past the collapsed hot dog stand, past the fountain filled with dead leaves and stagnant water. Sarah's ankles screamed with every step. Her lower back felt like someone was driving nails into her spine, but she kept moving. Dorothy stopped in front of the castle's main entrance. "My grandfather built this park in 1952. I grew up here, took my first steps on these paths, had my first kiss by that fountain back there." Her voice trembled with memory. "This place was magic, Sarah. Real magic. People came from hundreds of miles away to feel it, to remember what it was like to dream." "What happened?" "Life happened. My father died. I couldn't keep it running alone, and then..." Dorothy's face changed, hardened. "And then the men came. Men in expensive suits with briefcases full of money. They wanted to buy the park, tear it down, build condominiums." "You didn't sell." "No, because one of those men made me a different offer, a secret offer." Dorothy turned to face her. "He paid me a fortune to let him build something underneath the castle, a hidden vault, a place to store things he couldn't trust to his own company anymore." Sarah's mouth went dry. "What things?" "I don't know exactly. He brought crates in the middle of the night, spent hours down there alone with his sketches and his stories. He was dying, Sarah. He knew it. And he wanted to save something before he was gone." "Who was he?" Dorothy reached out and took Sarah's hand. Her skin was paper-thin, cool despite the warm night. "His name was Walt Disney." The world tilted. Sarah grabbed the castle wall for support. "That's impossible." "Is it Walt owned dozens of properties the company didn't know about? Places where he could work in private. Think in peace. This was one of them." Dorothy squeezed her hand. "He visited sometimes right up until the end. The last time I saw him a few weeks before he died, he told me that someday someone would come. Someone who needed what he'd hidden. Someone who would know what to do with it." "Why are you telling me this? Because you're her child, the one he was waiting for." Dorothy pulled a piece of paper from her pocket, yellowed with age, folded carefully. "He left this with me, said to give it to whoever found the vault." Sarah unfolded the paper. Handwritten words in faded blue ink. "The door is beneath the ballroom floor. The combination is the day I stopped dreaming. What you find belongs to whoever has the courage to share it." No signature, just a small drawing at the bottom. A mouse. Simple lines, almost childlike. "The day he stopped dreaming?" Sarah whispered. "He means the day he died." December 15th, 1966, 12/15/66. Dorothy nodded. "The vault has been waiting ever since. 43 years. For you." "Why me? I'm nobody. A pregnant widow with nothing." Dorothy smiled. It was sad and knowing and ancient all at once. "That's exactly why, child. That's exactly why." She turned and began walking back toward the park entrance. Her cane tapped against broken pavement like a metronome counting down to something. "Wait," Sarah called after her. "What's in the vault?" Dorothy didn't look back. "His dreams, child. All the ones they wouldn't let him share." And then she was gone, swallowed by darkness, leaving Sarah alone with a castle full of secrets and a scrap of paper that would change everything. Sarah didn't sleep. How could Tabuchi? The story Dorothy had told was impossible. Hidden vaults, secret treasures, the final legacy of Walt Disney himself. But she thought about Daniel's drawing. The castle with Gothic turrets. The words beneath it, find the door, find the dream. Daniel had known. Somehow her husband had known about this place. That's where the money had gone. Not to his failing animation studio, to this. To a search for something he believed in so strongly he'd risked everything. And now his widow had stumbled onto the finish line. Sarah grabbed her flashlight and walked toward the castle. Her body screamed protests with every step. Her feet had swollen so badly her sneakers cut into her skin. Her back felt like it might snap in half. The baby pressed against her bladder, her ribs, every organ she had. But she kept walking. The castle doors hung off their hinges. Sarah squeezed through the gap and entered absolute darkness. Her flashlight cut a narrow beam through decades of dust. The grand foyer had been magnificent once. Marble floors now cracked and covered with debris. A sweeping staircase leading to floors she didn't dare explore. Murals on the walls showing fairy tales, their colors faded but still visible. Sarah moved carefully, testing each step. The floor groaned beneath her weight. She was acutely aware of how dangerous this was. Pregnant. Alone? In a condemned building at 3 a.m., searching for a hidden vault that might not exist. But she kept moving. The ballroom was at the back of the castle. Double doors hung crooked on broken hinges. Sarah pushed through and entered a space that stole her breath. Even in ruin, it was beautiful. Chandeliers hung from the ceiling like frozen tears. Windows stretched from floor to ceiling. Moonlight streaming through broken glass. At the far end, a raised platform where an orchestra might have played. Sarah swept her flashlight across the floor. There, in the center of the room, a slight depression in the marble. A rectangle about 4 feet by 4 feet with seams so fine they could have been natural cracks. She knelt beside it. Her belly made the position awkward. Pain shot through her lower back. She ignored it. Her fingers found a small panel hidden beneath decades of dust. A keypad. Modern, electronic. Green lights blinking in the darkness. Someone had been maintaining this. Someone had kept the vault accessible while the rest of the park rotted away. Sarah's hands trembled as she entered the combination. 121566. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the floor began to move. The rectangle descended, revealing a staircase lit by dim emergency lights that impossibly still worked. Sarah stood at the top of the stairs. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Her baby kicked once hard like she was saying, "Go." She descended into the darkness. The stairs led down 20 feet to a narrow corridor. Bare concrete walls. Smooth floor. At the end, a steel door. A brass plaque beside it read, "Property of Walt Disney Enterprises, authorized personnel only. Project Stardust." Sarah's hand shook as she reached for the handle. The door swung open silently on perfectly oiled hinges. What she saw inside changed everything. The vault was the size of a small warehouse, climate-controlled, pristine, utterly at odds with the decay above. Metal filing cabinets lined the walls. Flat storage drawers filled another section. Display cases held artifacts under soft lighting that activated as she entered. And everywhere art. Animation cells, hundreds of them. Mickey Mouse, Snow White, Sleeping Beauty. Characters she recognized from her childhood, from Daniel's obsessions, from the dreams of generations. Concept art. Storyboards. Character designs for films that had never been made. Worlds that existed only in these pages and in the imagination of the man who had created them. Sarah walked through the vault in a trance. Her flashlight was unnecessary now. The climate control hummed softly. The air was cool and dry. Perfect preservation conditions maintained for 43 years. At the center of the room, a desk, papers spread across it like someone had just stepped away, and on top of the papers, a letter. Sarah picked it up with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Walt Disney letterhead. December 10th, 1966. 5 days before he died. To whoever finds this sanctuary of dreams, if you are reading this, then you have discovered what I spent my final years protecting. Not from the world deserves these dreams, but from those who would lock them away, control them, turn them into nothing more than products to be bought and sold. What you see here represents my heart's truest work. Stories too personal for committees. Characters too strange for marketing departments. Films that will never be made because they don't fit the formula. I have hidden these treasures in a place of wonder, trusting that someday the right soul will find them. Someone who understands that magic isn't about profit. It's about possibility. Guard them wisely, share them freely, And remember, it all started with a mouse, but it doesn't have to end with one. Walt, Sarah sank into the desk chair. Tears streamed down her face, and she didn't try to stop them. Daniel had died searching for this. Years of secrets. Mountains of debt. All for this moment that he would never see. And now she understood. He hadn't betrayed her. He had been chasing a dream. The same kind of dream that Walt Disney had hidden away for someone desperate enough to find. "I found it, Daniel," she whispered to the empty room. "I found your dream." The baby kicked, strong, certain, like she was proud of her mother. Then Sarah heard footsteps overhead. Heavy footsteps, multiple sets, moving with purpose, and a voice distant but clear. "Check the ballroom. The motion sensors triggered 20 minutes ago." They had found her. Sarah moved on instinct. Pure survival. She photographed everything she could reach with her phone. Animation cells. Documents. Walt's letter. Her fingers shook so badly half the photos came out blurred, but she kept shooting. The footsteps grew louder, closer. "The floor panel's been opened. She's in the vault." Sarah searched frantically for another exit. There had to be one. Walt wouldn't have built a trap with only one way out. Behind the filing cabinets on the far wall, a narrow door painted to blend with concrete. Sarah squeezed through just as she heard the vault entrance opening behind her. "Holy shit," a man's voice. Younger, awed. "It's real. The whole thing is real. Photograph everything. Catalog everything. Ms. Cross wants a full inventory before sunrise." Sarah didn't wait to hear more. She ran. The tunnel was narrow and dark. The floor was uneven. Her belly threw off her balance. Her back screamed with every step. The baby pressed against her bladder so hard she thought she might wet herself. But she kept running. The tunnel ended at a metal ladder leading to a trap door. Sarah climbed awkwardly every rung, agony, her arms shaking with the effort of pulling her pregnant body upward. The trapdoor was heavy. Rusted, she pushed with everything she had. Her vision went white with effort. Her shoulders screamed. It opened. Cool night air hit her face. She was behind the castle in an overgrown garden. Hedges provided cover. In the distance, flashlight beams swept through the park, searching for her. Sarah ran toward her car, stumbled through darkness, tripped over roots and debris, fell once hard, protecting her belly with her arms tasting blood where she'd bitten her tongue. Got up, kept running. She reached the Honda somehow, threw herself into the driver's seat, started the engine, floored the accelerator. The car shot through the gates. Behind her, headlights flickered on. Engines roared to life. They were following. Sarah drove like her life depended on it. Because it did. Turns taken at dangerous speeds. The Honda protesting but holding together. The trailer swaying wildly behind her. She made it to the highway. Merged into sparse traffic. The headlights stayed in her rearview mirror but fell back. They couldn't do anything now. Not with witnesses. Not in public. Sarah drove for 3 hours without stopping. Finally, at a truck stop diner somewhere she didn't recognize, she pulled over. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely put the car in park. Her whole body trembled with adrenaline and exhaustion and terror. She pulled out her phone, looked at the photos she'd managed to take. Animation cells worth fortunes. Concept art for films that had never existed. A letter from Walt Disney himself explaining why he'd hidden his life's work from his own company. Evidence. Proof that she hadn't imagined any of it. "Okay, baby girl," Sarah said to her belly, her voice cracking. "We're in trouble, big trouble, but we have something they want, something they're afraid of." She took a deep breath. "And we're not going to let them win." The baby kicked once, hard, like agreement, like defiance. Sarah started the car and drove into the night. She needed help. She needed allies. She needed someone who would believe her impossible story and help her fight a corporation with more money and power than she could imagine. And she knew exactly where to start. Sarah found a motel outside Macon that took cash and didn't ask questions. She paid for 3 nights, locked the door, pushed a dresser against it for good measure. Then she searched her phone for Daniel's email account. The password hadn't been changed since his death. She found what she was looking for in a folder labeled Research. Emails. Dozens of them, between Daniel and a journalist named James Whitmore. The subject lines told the story. Project Stardust leads. Disney property records. Shell Company documentation. Meeting next week to compare notes. The last email was dated 3 days before Daniel died. James, I think I've found it. One of 3 possible locations in Georgia. I'm going to check them out this weekend. If I'm right, everything changes. This is what Walt wanted. This is what we've been searching for. Daniel. Daniel had been 3 days away from finding the vault himself. 3 days away from the truth. And then he died, on a highway in the middle of the night. Coincidence? Sarah didn't believe in coincidences anymore. She dialed James Whitmore's number at 6 a.m. Whitmore. Mr. Whitmore, my name is Sarah Mitchell. Daniel Mitchell was my husband. Silence. Then, Mrs. Mitchell, I heard about the accident. I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Whitmore, I need to meet with you. Today. It's urgent. About Daniel's research. About what he found. What I found. Sarah took a breath. I was at Starlight Kingdom last night. I found the vault. I found Project Stardust. The silence stretched so long Sarah thought the call had dropped. Where are you, Canoe? Motel outside Macon. Stay there. Don't talk to anyone. Don't answer the door. I'll be there in 4 hours. He made it in 3. James Whitmore was not what Sarah expected. Tall, disheveled, wire-rimmed glasses and a permanent expression of someone who had seen too much and trusted too little. He looked like a man who had been fighting losing battles for so long he'd forgotten what winning felt like. He studied her photos in silence. His face cycled through emotions. Disbelief, wonder, fury, hope. This is real, he finally said. This is actually real. I need your help. He looked up at her pregnant belly, at the fear in her eyes. The people who are after you, do you know who they are? Someone named Cross? Ms. Cross. That's all I heard. James's face went pale. Victoria Cross. You know her. Disney's attack dog, senior vice president of something they call legal recovery. What they actually do is make problems disappear. He stood up, paced the small room. She's been hunting for Project Stardust for 20 years. Rumor is Walt specifically designed the hiding place to be impossible for corporate searchers to find. It could only be found by accident, by someone with nothing to lose who stumbled onto it by chance. Like me. Like you. James stopped pacing. Mrs. Mitchell, do you understand what you're holding? These materials are worth hundreds of millions of dollars. But more than that, they're proof that Walt Disney himself tried to protect his legacy from his own company. If this goes public, it's the biggest corporate scandal in entertainment history. So help me make it public. James laughed. It was a bitter sound. It's not that simple. Victoria Cross has destroyed people for less. She's had journalists fired. She's bankrupted researchers with frivolous lawsuits. He stopped, pulled up his sleeve. A scar ran from his wrist to his elbow. Her security team did this to me 6 years ago when I got too close to a story. They made it look like an accident. Sarah stared at the scar. Her blood ran cold. I have nothing left to lose, she said quietly. My husband is dead. My home is gone. I have $18,000 and a baby who will be born in 2 months with no father, no home, and no future. She met his eyes. Victoria Cross can't take anything from me that hasn't already been taken, but she has something I want. What's that? Justice. For Daniel, for Walt, for everyone who's been silenced to protect corporate profits. Sarah placed her hand on her belly. My daughter is going to grow up in a world where people fight for what's right. I'm going to show her how. James studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled. It transformed his face, made him look younger, almost hopeful. Your husband was right about you, he said softly. What? He told me once that if anything ever happened to him, his wife would finish what he started. He said you were the strongest person he'd ever known. James held out his hand. Let's burn Victoria Cross's empire to the ground. Sarah shook his hand. Where do we start? I know a historian, Elena Vasquez. She worked with Walt in his final years. If anyone can authenticate these materials, it's her. James pulled out his phone. I also know a lawyer, Thomas Chen. His father was one of Disney's first Asian animators. Walt hired him personally in 1952. Thomas has been waiting for a chance to honor that legacy. How long until we're ready? 48 hours. I can have experts, lawyers, and media contacts lined up. But Sarah, once we go public, there's no going back. Victoria Cross will come at you with everything she has. Lawsuits, threats, worse. Are you ready for that? Sarah looked out the motel window. Dawn was breaking. A new day beginning. Somewhere out there, Victoria Cross was planning her destruction. Marshalling lawyers and investigators and whatever dark resources a corporation worth billions could bring to bear against a pregnant widow with nothing. But Sarah had something Victoria didn't. She had the truth. She had people willing to fight beside her. And she had absolutely nothing left to fear. I'm ready, she said. The phone on the nightstand buzzed. Unknown number. Sarah answered. Sarah Mitchell? The voice was female, cold, precise, controlled. My name is Victoria Cross. I believe we need to talk. Sarah's grip tightened on the phone. Across the room, James's face went white. Mrs. Cross, I've heard a lot about you. And I've heard about you, the desperate widow who stumbled onto something that doesn't belong to her. According to Walt Disney's own letter, it belongs to whoever found it. That's me. Silence. When Victoria spoke again, her voice had dropped to something barely above a whisper, something dangerous. Let me be very clear, Mrs. Mitchell. I have destroyed people with more resources, more connections, and more power than you could dream of having. What you found represents an existential threat to a company worth $200 billion. There is no length I won't go to. No line I won't cross. No action too extreme to protect what's mine. It was never yours. That's the whole point. Enjoy your bravery while it lasts. In 48 hours, you'll wish you'd never heard the name Walt Disney. The line went dead. Sarah lowered the phone. Her hand was steady. Her heart was calm. She's coming, James said. Let her come. Sarah placed her hand on her belly where her daughter kicked with furious energy. We have 48 hours to tell the world the truth. After that, it won't matter what Victoria Cross does. The genie will be out of the bottle, and some genies can never be put back. James nodded slowly. Respect flickered in his eyes. Daniel was right, he said. You are the strongest person I've ever met. Sarah smiled. For the first time since her husband died, it felt real. I'm just a mother protecting her child's future, she said. There's nothing stronger than that. Outside the motel window, the sun finished rising. A new day had begun, and somewhere in the shadows, Victoria Cross was marshaling her forces for war. But Sarah Mitchell was ready. She had nothing left to lose, and everything left to fight for. Victoria Cross hung up the phone, and Sarah felt the weight of what was coming settle over her like a shroud. 48 hours. That's what the woman had given her. 48 hours before the full might of a $200 billion corporation came crashing down on her head. James was already moving. He had his phone pressed to his ear before Sarah could speak. Elena, it's James. I need you in Macon, Georgia by tonight. No, I can't explain over the phone. Just trust me. This is the one. This is what we've been waiting for. He ended the call and dialed again. Thomas, drop everything. I'm sending you an address. Be there by 6 p.m. Bring your emergency litigation kit. We're going to war. Sarah watched him work her hand resting on her belly where the baby had finally settled into stillness. She should have been terrified. She should have been paralyzed by the threat Victoria Cross had just delivered. Instead, she felt something unexpected. Clarity. For the first time since Daniel's death, she knew exactly what she needed to do. James? He looked up from his phone. Tell me everything about Victoria Cross. I need to know who I'm fighting. James sat down heavily on the motel bed. The springs creaked under his weight. Victoria Cross has been with Disney for 31 years. Started in the legal department right out of law school. Climbed the ranks by doing the jobs no one else would touch. He rubbed his eyes. She's the one they call when something needs to disappear. Lawsuits, scandals, people who know too much. People like Daniel. The question hung in the air between them. James was quiet for a long moment. I've wondered about that. The timing of his accident. He was 3 days away from finding the vault. 3 days away from exposing everything Victoria has spent 2 decades protecting. He met Sarah's eyes. I can't prove anything, but I stopped believing in coincidences a long time ago. Sarah's blood went cold. The room seemed to shrink around her. Are you saying she had my husband killed? I'm saying I don't know. I'm saying the official report called it an accident. Single vehicle, wet roads, lost control. James shook his head. But Daniel was a careful driver, he didn't take risks, and he died on a straight stretch of highway with no witnesses at 2 a.m. Sarah's hands curled into fists. The grief she'd been carrying for weeks transformed into something hotter, something sharper. If she killed him, Sarah said slowly, if she took my husband from me and left my daughter without a father, then I'm not just going to expose her secrets, I'm going to destroy her. James nodded. Then let's get to work. Elena Vasquez arrived at 4:47 p.m. She was 73 years old, small and fierce with silver hair pulled back in a tight bun and eyes that had seen things most people couldn't imagine. She had worked at Disney from 1962 to 1989, starting as a junior animator and rising to lead entire sequences in films that had shaped childhoods around the world. She had also been in the room when Walt Disney took his last breath. Sarah watched her scroll through the photos on the phone. Elena's hands trembled. Tears slid down her weathered cheeks, and she didn't bother to wipe them away. "Oh, Walt," she whispered. "You actually did it. You actually saved them. You recognize the materials." Elena looked up at Sarah with something like reverence. "Recognize them. I helped create some of them. This concept art here for the Dreamer's Door, I drew these characters in 1965. Walt rejected them for the studio because they were too strained, too dark for the Disney brand. But he kept everything. He told me someday the world would be ready." She pressed the phone to her chest. "I thought they were lost forever." "They're worth millions," James said. "They're worth more than money." Elena's voice hardened. "They're worth the truth. Walt Disney spent his final years fighting his own company. The board wanted safe, profitable, predictable. Walt wanted to keep dreaming. These materials represent every dream they wouldn't let him share." Sarah knelt beside the older woman. Her belly made the position awkward, but she didn't care. "Will you help me? Will you authenticate these materials and tell the world what Walt really wanted?" Elena took Sarah's hands in hers. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "Child, I've been waiting 43 years for someone to ask me that question." She smiled through her tears. "When do we start?" Thomas Chen arrived at 6:23 p.m. in a rental car filled with legal documents and the determination of a man who had been preparing for this fight his entire life. He was 42 years old, sharp-featured and intense with the kind of energy that made rooms feel smaller when he entered them. His father, William Chen, had been one of Disney's first Asian animators, hired personally by Walt in 1952 when no other studio would touch him. "My father told me stories," Thomas said, spreading documents across the motel desk, "about late-night conversations with Walt, about a vault he was building somewhere secret, about his fear that the company would bury his real legacy after he died." He looked at Sarah. "I thought they were just stories, the ramblings of an old man who missed his friend." "They weren't stories." "No, they weren't." Thomas pulled out a legal pad. "Here's where we stand. You purchased the property legally. The materials were abandoned on that property for over 40 years with no attempt at retrieval. Under Georgia law, abandoned property belongs to the landowner." "Disney will argue the materials were never abandoned," James said. "They'll claim they were stolen, hidden, that Walt had no authority to remove company property. Let them argue." Thomas smiled. It was not a friendly expression. "I've spent 15 years studying Disney's corporate charter from the 1960s. Walt Disney had absolute authority over creative materials during his lifetime. Anything he personally created or directed belonged to him, not the company. If he chose to hide that work on private property, that was his legal right." Sarah felt hope flicker in her chest. "So we can win. We can make them bleed. We can tie them up in litigation for years. And most importantly, we can go public with everything before they can stop us." Thomas checked his watch. "We have roughly 40 hours until Victoria Cross mobilizes her full legal team. I suggest we use every minute." The next 6 hours were a blur of activity. Elena worked through the photos, identifying each piece, documenting its origin and significance. Her memory was extraordinary. She could name the artist, the date, the project for nearly every item Sarah had photographed. "This is from Fantasia 2, she said, pointing to a stunning piece of concept art. "Walt wanted to make sequels to Fantasia every few years, constantly expanding, constantly experimenting. The board killed it after his death, said it wasn't commercial enough." She scrolled to another image. "This is the Rainbow King, Walt's passion project, a story about a boy who discovers he can see colors no one else can see. He worked on it in secret because the marketing department said it was too abstract, too risky." Image after image, story after story. 43 years of suppressed dreams coming to light in a cramped motel room in Georgia. By midnight, they had documented over 200 individual pieces. Elena estimated the collection's value at between $175 and $225 million. "But that's just the monetary value," she said. "The historical significance is incalculable. This collection proves that Walt Disney was actively fighting against the corporatization of his legacy before he died. It proves that everything the company has become is exactly what he feared." James had been on the phone for hours, reaching out to contacts in media academia and the collector community. The response was overwhelming. "The New York Times wants an exclusive. CNN is offering primetime coverage. 3 museums have already reached out about hosting the collection." He looked at Sarah. "By tomorrow afternoon, this story will be everywhere. There's no way Disney can suppress it." Sarah should have felt triumphant. Instead, she felt the baby kick anxiously against her ribs. "It's too easy," she said. Everyone stopped. "What do you mean?" Thomas asked. "Victoria Cross gave me 48 hours. She's not stupid. She knows we're going to try to go public. She's planning something." Sarah pressed her hand against her belly. "I can feel it. Something bad is coming." The phone call came at 2:17 a.m. Sarah had finally dozed off in the motel chair when her cell phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered anyway. "Mrs. Mitchell, this is First National Bank of Georgia. We're calling to inform you that your accounts have been frozen pending investigation." Sarah sat up so fast her back screamed in protest. What investigation?" "I'm not authorized to provide details. You'll receive formal notification within 24 hours. Until then, all deposits and withdrawals have been suspended." The line went dead. Sarah stared at her phone. Her hands were shaking. "James? James, wake up!" He was alert in seconds. Years of investigative journalism had trained him to sleep light. "What happened?" "They froze my bank account, all of it. Everything I have." James's face went pale in the dim light. "That's fast, even for Victoria. What do? I have nothing. I can't pay for this room. I can't buy food. I can't—" "Sarah." James grabbed her shoulders. "Look at me. This is what she does. She attacks from every angle at once. Financial, legal, personal. She wants you overwhelmed. She wants you to panic and make mistakes." "I have $16,000 in that account. It's all I have left in the world." "We'll figure it out. Thomas has resources. I have contacts. You're not alone in this." But Sarah felt alone. Desperately, terrifyingly alone. She was 7 months pregnant, her husband was dead, and now a corporate giant was systematically dismantling every support she had left. The baby kicked hard. Once, twice, like she was fighting back against the fear. Sarah took a deep breath. Okay, what's next?" The news article appeared at 6:45 a.m. Thomas found it first, his face going white as he read. "Sarah, you need to see this." He handed her his phone. The headline made her stomach drop. "Pregnant squatter claims Disney treasure in possible fraud scheme." The article painted her as mentally unstable, a grieving widow who had snapped after her husband's death. A woman squatting on condemned property, making wild claims about hidden vaults and secret treasures to scam donors out of money. "They're saying I'm running a GoFundMe fraud," Sarah said, her voice hollow. "I don't even have a GoFundMe. They set one up in your name. Look." Thomas pointed to a paragraph. "Someone created a fundraising page claiming to be you collected $30,000 and disappeared. Disney's PR team leaked it to make you look like a con artist." Sarah felt sick. Her breakfast threatened to come back up. "Can they do that? Can they just destroy someone's reputation with lies?" "They can do anything they want," Elena said grimly. "They have unlimited resources and no conscience. I've seen them do this before, to artists, to writers, to anyone who threatened the brand." James was already on the phone. "My editor at the Times is running interference. We're going to get our story out before they can bury you, but we need to move faster. Victoria's not waiting 48 hours. She's attacking now." Sarah looked at the article again, at the lies being spread about her to millions of people, at her reputation being shredded before she could defend herself. Something inside her shifted, hardened, became something new. "Then let's attack back." The knock on the motel door came at 9:15 a.m. Thomas checked the peephole and swore under his breath. "County Sheriff, 2 deputies." Sarah's heart stopped. "Open up, we have a warrant." Thomas opened the door. The sheriff was a large man with a weathered face and eyes that had seen too much. He held a document in his hand. "Sarah Mitchell." "That's me." "Ma'am, I have a court order requiring your immediate evacuation from the Starlight Kingdom property. You're also being served notice of a civil lawsuit filed by the Walt Disney Company claiming theft of corporate property valued in excess of $50 million. He handed her the papers. Sarah took them with numb fingers. "I haven't been at the property since 2 days ago." "That's not my concern, ma'am. I'm also instructed to inform you that any attempt to distribute, sell, or publicize materials allegedly removed from that property will be considered destruction of evidence and prosecuted accordingly." "She hasn't removed anything." Thomas stepped forward. "She took photographs. That's not theft." The sheriff shrugged. "Take it up with the court. My job is to serve the papers." He tipped his hat. "Ma'am, gentlemen, have a good day." He left. The door closed. Silence filled the room. Sarah looked down at the lawsuit. $50 million. A number so absurd it would have been funny if it wasn't designed to destroy her. "They're trying to gag us," James said. "If we publish now, they'll claim we're destroying evidence. They'll have grounds for an emergency injunction." "We can fight this," Thomas said, but his voice lacked conviction. "We can file a motion to dismiss, argue that photographs aren't physical evidence." "How long? What? How long will it take to fight this in court?" Thomas hesitated. "Months, maybe years." Sarah laughed. It was a broken sound. "I don't have months. I have 31 hours before Victoria's deadline. I have a baby coming in 2 months. I have nothing." She sat down heavily on the bed. "She's won, hasn't she?" "She's already won." Nobody answered. The second knock came at 11:30 a.m. This time it wasn't the sheriff. A man stood in the doorway, mid-40s, expensive suit, the kind of smile that made you want to count your fingers after shaking his hand. "Mrs. Mitchell, my name is Marcus Reeves. I was your husband's business partner." Sarah's blood went cold. Daniel didn't have a business partner. "I'm afraid he did. Silent partner. I provided funding for his animation studio in exchange for a share of any discoveries made through his research." Marcus stepped into the room uninvited. "Research that led him to Starlight Kingdom. Research that led you to a collection worth $200 million. Get out." "I'm afraid I can't do that. You see, I have documentation proving that Daniel owed me $287,000 at the time of his death. That debt plus interest now falls to you as his widow, and since you appear to have discovered a rather valuable asset..." He smiled wider. "I believe we have a claim to discuss." Thomas stepped forward. "This is extortion. This is business. I have contracts, bank records, emails." Marcus pulled documents from his briefcase. "Your husband was very thorough in his documentation, perhaps a bit too thorough for his own good." Sarah stood up. Her belly seemed to grow heavier with every passing second, but she forced herself to her full height. "You're lying. Daniel never mentioned a partner. He never mentioned any of this." "Daniel kept many secrets from you, Mrs. Mitchell. Some of them got him killed." The room went silent. "What did you say?" Marcus's smile flickered. "Just for a second. I said some of them got him into trouble. The kind of trouble that follows you on dark highways at 2 a.m. Sarah moved before she knew what she was doing. Her hand connected with Marcus's face hard enough to make her palm sting. He stumbled backward, shock replacing his smug expression. "Get out of my room." "You're going to regret that." "I said get out." Marcus straightened his tie. His cheek was already reddening from the slap. "You have 48 hours to respond to my claim. After that, I'll be forced to pursue legal remedies." He walked to the door. "Oh, and Mrs. Mitchell Victoria Cross sends her regards." He was gone. Sarah stood trembling in the middle of the room. Her hand throbbed where she'd hit him. Her heart pounded against her ribs. "He's working for Disney," James said. "The partnership claimed the debt, all of it. They manufactured this to give them another angle of attack." "Can they do that?" "They just did." Sarah sank onto the bed. The baby was kicking furiously now, disturbed by her mother's racing heartbeat and rising panic. "What do I do, James? What do I do? They've frozen my money. They've destroyed my reputation. They're suing me for $50 million. And now this." She pressed her hands against her belly. "I can't fight all of this. I'm one person. I'm pregnant. I have nothing." Elena sat down beside her. The old woman's hand found Sarah's and held it tight. "When I was 23 years old," Elena said softly, "I walked into Walt Disney's office and told him I wanted to be an animator. He laughed at me, not cruelly but genuinely amused. Women didn't animate in 1962. It simply wasn't done." Sarah looked up. "What did you do?" "I told him I didn't care what wasn't done. I cared about what should be done. I cared about making magic that lasted longer than I would." Elena squeezed her hand. "Walt hired me on the spot. He said anyone with that much fire couldn't be stopped anyway, so he might as well point me in the right direction." "I don't have fire, I have fear." "Fire and fear are the same thing, child. They're both reactions to something bigger than yourself. The only difference is which direction you run." Sarah looked at Elena, at James, at Thomas, 3 people she'd known for less than 24 hours who were risking everything to help her. "Why are you doing this?" "Why do you care what happens to me?" James answered first. "Because I've spent 15 years watching Disney crush anyone who challenged them. I'm tired of being afraid." Thomas nodded. Because my father gave his life to that company and they wrote him out of their history. I'm tired of letting them win. Elena smiled. Because Walt asked me to. 43 years ago, on his deathbed, he grabbed my hand and said, "Promise me you'll help whoever finds them." I've been waiting to keep that promise ever since. Sarah felt tears sliding down her cheeks. She didn't try to stop them. I'm scared. Good, Elena said. That means you understand what's at stake. Now, are you going to run away from the fire, or are you going to run through it? Sarah took a deep breath. Inside her belly, the baby settled into stillness, waiting. Through, Sarah whispered. I'm running through. The counterattack began at 1:15 p.m. Thomas filed emergency motions challenging the court order, arguing that photographs were constitutionally protected and could not be suppressed. He cited precedent from press freedom cases going back 50 years. James released the first batch of images to his media contacts with a detailed statement explaining what Sarah had found and what Disney was doing to silence her. The story spread across social media like wildfire. Elena recorded a video statement, her face weathered but her voice strong. My name is Elena Vasquez. I worked alongside Walt Disney for the final 4 years of his life. The materials discovered by Sarah Mitchell are authentic. I helped create some of them myself. Walt hid these treasures because he feared exactly what is happening now. Corporate forces trying to control his legacy, suppress his vision, and destroy anyone who threatens their power. The video was viewed 2 million times in 3 hours. But Victoria Cross wasn't finished. At 4:30 p.m., Sarah's phone buzzed with a news alert. Local woman in Disney dispute has history of mental health issues. Sources say Sarah read the article with growing horror. It quoted anonymous sources claiming she had been hospitalized for depression after her husband's death, that she had made threats against Disney executives, that she was unstable, dangerous, possibly delusional. This is insane. I was never hospitalized. I never made threats. Doesn't matter, James said grimly. They're not trying to prove anything. They're trying to create doubt, make people question whether you're credible. But it's all lies. Welcome to corporate warfare. Truth is whatever they say it is. Sarah felt her control slipping. The stress was overwhelming. Her back ached. Her feet were swollen. The baby hadn't stopped moving for hours, disturbed by her mother's constant state of terror. I need air. I need to walk. Sarah, it's not safe. I'm going crazy in this room. Just 5 minutes. I need 5 minutes. She walked outside before anyone could stop her. The motel parking lot was empty except for their cars. Late afternoon sun beat down on cracked asphalt. Sarah leaned against her Honda and tried to breathe. This was supposed to be easy. Find the treasure, share it with the world, honor Daniel's memory and Walt's legacy. Instead, she was being destroyed, piece by piece, lie by lie. Rough day. Sarah spun around. A woman stood 20 feet away, mid-50s, silver hair, eyes like ice chips. Victoria Cross. In the flesh. I thought we should meet in person, before things get uglier. Sarah's heart pounded, but she held her ground. You froze my bank account. You planted fake stories about me. You sent that man to claim Daniel owed him money. She stepped forward. You murdered my husband. Victoria's expression didn't change. I don't know what you're talking about. Daniel was 3 days away from finding the vault. 3 days. And then he died in a single car accident on a dry highway with no witnesses. Sarah's voice shook with rage. You killed him. Your husband died because he was driving too fast on a dangerous road. Accidents happen, especially to people who stick their noses where they don't belong. Is that a threat? Victoria smiled. It was the coldest thing Sarah had ever seen. I don't make threats, Mrs. Mitchell. I make promises. And here's one for you. She stepped closer. Close enough that Sarah could smell her perfume. In 24 hours, you will be arrested for fraud, theft, and obstruction of justice. You will give birth to your baby in a prison hospital. Your child will be taken by the state and raised by strangers. And everything you found, everything you're trying to protect, will be locked in a Disney vault where no one will ever see it again. Sarah felt ice spreading through her veins. You can't do that. I can do anything I want. I have more money, more lawyers, and more power than you could possibly imagine. You're an ant fighting a giant Mrs. Mitchell, and I'm about to step on you. Victoria turned to leave, then stopped. Oh, and one more thing. That business partner your husband allegedly had Marcus Reeves. She glanced back over her shoulder. He's been on my payroll for 6 years. We've been tracking Daniel's research since 2018. Every step he took, we knew about it. Every discovery he made, we documented. Your husband wasn't just searching for Walt's legacy. He was leading us right to it. Sarah's legs went weak. She grabbed the car for support. You used him? We used everyone. That's how this works. Victoria's smile widened. Have a nice evening, Mrs. Mitchell. Enjoy your last night of freedom. She walked away, disappeared around the corner of the building, left Sarah alone with the ruins of everything she thought she knew. Daniel hadn't just been searching for the vault. He'd been followed, monitored, manipulated, and when he got too close when he was about to find what they'd been hunting for decades, they killed him. Sarah slid down the side of the car until she was sitting on the hot asphalt. Her hands covered her belly protectively. Inside, the baby kicked with frantic energy. I know, Sarah whispered. I know, baby, but we're not giving up. Not now, not ever. She pulled out her phone and called James. Get everyone together. I know how to beat her. Sarah walked back into the motel room with fire in her eyes. Victoria just made a mistake. Everyone looked up. She told me Marcus Reeves has been on her payroll for 6 years, that they've been tracking Daniel's research since 2018. That means he's not a real business partner. He's a corporate spy. Thomas sat up straight. If we can prove that the debt claim falls apart, it's fraud. More than that, James was already thinking ahead. If Marcus was paid by Disney to infiltrate Daniel's research, that's corporate espionage. That's criminal conspiracy. That's enough to turn this whole story on its head. How do we prove it? James smiled. Leave that to me. I still have contacts at 3 major banks. If there's a paper trail between Disney and Marcus Reeves, I'll find it. The next hours were a blur of activity. James worked his sources chasing financial records through back channels that technically didn't exist. Thomas prepared emergency motions challenging every legal action Disney had taken. Elena expanded her video statement adding details about Walt's final years that had never been made public. And Sarah waited. Her body ached. Her baby kicked constantly. But she refused to rest. At 10:47 p.m., James looked up from his laptop with an expression of triumph. Got him. Everyone gathered around. Marcus Reeves received payments totaling $847,000 from a shell company called Stardust Holdings, LLC between 2019 and 2024. Guess who owns Stardust Holdings? Disney. A subsidiary of a subsidiary buried under 4 layers of corporate structure. But yeah, Disney. James turned the laptop around. It gets better. The payment started 3 months after Daniel first contacted me about his research. They knew. They've known for years. And they paid Marcus to stay close to Daniel, monitor his progress, and report back. Sarah felt something break open inside her. Grief and rage and hope all tangled together. They killed him. They actually killed my husband because he was getting too close. We can't prove that. Not yet. But we can prove they conspired to steal his work. We can prove the debt claim is fraudulent. We can prove Victoria Cross has been running an illegal surveillance operation for years. Thomas was already on his phone. I'm filing charges with the State Attorney General's office, corporate fraud, conspiracy. If they want to play hardball, we'll give them hardball. The New York Times published their story at 6 a.m. Disney accused of corporate espionage in hunt for Walt's secret legacy. The article detailed everything. The vault, the collection, the attacks on Sarah, the payments to Marcus Reeves, Victoria Cross's threats. By 8 a.m., Disney's stock had dropped 7%. By 10 a.m., shareholders were demanding answers. By noon, Victoria Cross had been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Sarah watched it happen from the motel room, her phone buzzing constantly with interview requests and media inquiries. We did it, she whispered. We actually did it. But James shook his head. It's not over. Victoria's been neutralized, but Disney's not going to give up. They'll regroup, find a new strategy. This fight is just beginning. Sarah nodded. She knew he was right. But for the first time since Daniel died, she felt something she'd almost forgotten how to feel. Hope. The call came at 3:15 p.m. from a number she didn't recognize. Mrs. Mitchell, this is Thomas Hartley, CEO of the Walt Disney Company. I believe we need to have a conversation. Sarah gripped the phone tighter. I'm listening. What's happened over the past 72 hours has been a wake-up call for our organization. The actions taken by Victoria Cross and her team were not authorized by the board. They do not represent our values or our vision for this company. They represented your company just fine when they were destroying my life. Silence on the line. Then, you're right, and I apologize, sincerely and completely. What was done to you, to your husband, to Walt's legacy, was wrong. We want to make it right. Sarah looked at James, Elena, and Thomas. They were all watching her intently. "What exactly are you proposing?" "A partnership, not a buyout, not corporate control. A genuine collaboration to honor Walt's final wishes. We'll fund the preservation and display of the collection. We'll support your vision for sharing it with the world, and we'll establish a foundation in your husband's name to support independent animators." And Sarah's throat tightened. Why would you do that? Because Walt was right. The company lost its way. We became what he feared. Maybe it's time we remembered why we started in the first place. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. The baby kicked once softly as if offering her opinion. "I'll need to think about it, and I'll need guarantees, legal protections, complete transparency." "Whatever you need, Mrs. Mitchell, take your time." The line went dead. Sarah lowered the phone. Her hands were shaking. "What did he say?" James demanded. Sarah looked around the room at the people who had fought beside her, who had risked everything to help a pregnant stranger they barely knew. "He said we won." But even as she spoke the words, she knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Sarah stared at the phone in her hand for a long time after the call ended. The CEO of Disney had just apologized to her, had just offered partnership instead of war, had just admitted that everything Victoria Cross did was wrong. It felt like a trap. "Don't trust him." James said it before she could. Hartley didn't get to be CEO by being nice. He's cutting his losses, sacrificing Victoria to save the company's reputation. But if he's genuine, he's not. No corporation worth $200 billion gives up that easily. They're regrouping, finding a new angle. James ran his hand through his hair. "We need to stay aggressive. Keep the pressure on." Elena shook her head slowly. "Maybe, or maybe this is exactly what Walt hoped for. Not destruction, reconciliation, the company remembering why it was built in the first place." "You're being naive." "I'm being hopeful. There's a difference." Sarah listened to them argue, but her mind was elsewhere. The baby had been unusually quiet for the past hour. No kicks, no movement, just stillness that felt wrong somehow. She pressed her hand against her belly. "Come on, little one. Show Mama you're okay." Nothing. The first contraction hit at 4:47 p.m. Sarah gasped and doubled over. Pain shot through her abdomen like lightning radiating outward until her entire body seized. "Sarah?" Elena was at her side instantly. "What's wrong?" "I don't know. Something, another contraction. Stronger." Oh God, that's not normal." Thomas grabbed his phone. "I'm calling 911. "No." Sarah forced the word through gritted teeth. "They'll know where I am. Victoria's people will." "Victoria's been suspended. You need a hospital." "She still has contacts. She still has..." The third contraction made Sarah scream. She felt something wet between her legs. Looked down. Blood. "That's too much blood." Elena's voice was sharp with fear. "Thomas, call now. Call right now." The ambulance arrived in 11 minutes. Sarah barely remembered the ride. Contractions came in waves, each one worse than the last. The paramedics spoke in calm voices, but their eyes told a different story. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. "How far along are you, ma'am?" 7 months, almost 8. "Any complications during pregnancy?" "No, nothing. It was supposed to be." Another contraction stole her breath. It was supposed to be easy. The hospital was chaos. Doctors rushed her into an examination room. Monitors beeped. Nurses shouted numbers she didn't understand. Someone stuck an IV in her arm. Someone else strapped a belt around her belly to track the baby's heartbeat. "The placenta is separating." A doctor's voice urgent. "We need to do an emergency C-section now." "What does that mean? Is my baby okay?" "Mrs. Mitchell, your baby is in distress. We need to deliver her immediately or what?" The doctor's face said everything his words didn't. "Prep or 3. Someone get her signed consent forms." Sarah grabbed his arm with strength she didn't know she had. "Save my baby. Whatever happens to me, save my baby. Promise me." "We're going to do everything we can." "Promise me." The doctor met her eyes. "I promise." They wheeled her toward surgery. The ceiling lights blurred overhead. Sarah heard James shouting something in the hallway, heard Elena praying in Spanish, heard Thomas arguing with a security guard. Then the anesthesia hit and everything went dark. Sarah woke to silence. No monitors beeping, no doctors shouting. Just silence and soft light and the feeling of emptiness in her belly. "My baby," her voice cracked. "Where's my baby?" A nurse appeared at her bedside. Mrs. Mitchell, you're awake. How do you feel? Where's my baby? The doctor will be here in just a moment, too. Where is my baby? The door opened. A woman in surgical scrubs entered, her face exhausted, but her eyes kind. Mrs. Mitchell, I'm Dr. Chen. I performed your surgery. Please tell me she's okay. Dr. Chen pulled a chair beside the bed and sat down. She took Sarah's hand. Your daughter was born at 6:23 p.m.? She weighed 4 pounds, 2 ounces. The doctor smiled. She's small, but she's a fighter. She's in the NICU right now, being monitored, but all her vitals are strong. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. She's alive. She's alive, and she's beautiful. Can I see her? In a few hours, once you've recovered enough to move. The C-section was complicated. You lost a lot of blood. Dr. Chen squeezed her hand. You almost died, Mrs. Mitchell. Whatever stress you've been under, it nearly killed both of you. Sarah closed her eyes. The tears wouldn't stop. I want to see my daughter. Soon, I promise. Rest now. But Sarah couldn't rest. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Daniel's face, saw the vault beneath the castle, saw Victoria Cross's cold smile. She had almost died. Her baby had almost died. And for what? For a collection of old drawings. For a dead man's dreams? No. For truth. For justice. For the chance to give her daughter a world where corporations couldn't destroy lives without consequence. It was worth dying for. It was worth living for, too. James appeared at 9:15 p.m. His face was gray with exhaustion. He'd been awake for almost 40 hours straight, fighting a war on multiple fronts while Sarah fought for her life. Hey. He pulled a chair next to her bed. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck. Then the truck backed up and hit me again. James laughed softly. The doctors say you're going to be fine. The baby, too. He reached out and squeezed her hand. You scared the hell out of us, Sarah. I scared the hell out of myself. They sat in silence for a moment. The hospital hummed with quiet activity around them. What's happening out there? Sarah asked. With Disney, with Victoria. A lot. James pulled out his phone. The story's gone global. Every major news outlet is covering it. Disney's stock dropped another 4% today. Shareholders are demanding a full investigation. And Victoria, that's where it gets interesting. James's expression darkened. She's disappeared. Sarah sat up too fast. Pain shot through her abdomen. What do you mean disappeared? Left her home sometime last night, hasn't been seen since. Her phone's off. Her credit cards haven't been used. It's like she vanished. That's not good. No, it's not. James met her eyes. Victoria Cross doesn't run away. She's planning something. I just don't know what yet. Sarah felt cold despite the warm hospital blankets. She threatened me, told me I'd give birth in prison, that my baby would be taken away. She can't do that anymore. She has no power. Victoria Cross has been building power for 30 years. You don't lose that overnight. Sarah shook her head. She's not done with me. I can feel it. Then we stay vigilant. Keep security tight. Don't let our guard down. I want to see my baby. Sarah, you just had surgery. I need to see her, James. I need to hold her. I need to know she's real. James looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. I'll get a nurse. They brought Sarah to the NICU in a wheelchair at 10:30 p.m. The room was dim and warm, filled with the soft sounds of machines, keeping tiny lives going. Incubators lined the walls like transparent cradles, each one holding a baby too small, too early, too fragile for the world outside. Sarah's daughter was in the corner unit. She was so small, so impossibly small. Wires connected her to monitors. A tiny tube helped her breathe. Her eyes were closed, her fingers curled into fists no bigger than acorns. She's beautiful. Sarah couldn't stop crying. She's so beautiful. The nurse smiled. Would you like to hold her? Skin-to-skin contact is good for preemies. Can I? Just be gentle. She's stronger than she looks. They placed the baby on Sarah's chest. She weighed almost nothing. A warm breathing miracle pressed against her mother's heart. Hi, baby girl, Sarah whispered. I'm your mama. I've been waiting so long to meet you. The baby stirred. Her tiny hand found Sarah's finger and gripped it with surprising strength. I'm going to name you Hope. Sarah's voice broke. Because that's what you are. That's what you've always been. The hope that kept me going when everything else fell apart. Hope opened her eyes, just for a second, just long enough to look at her mother. Then she closed them again and settled into sleep. Sarah held her daughter and cried until she had no tears left. The attack came at 2:47 a.m. Sarah was back in her room finally sleeping when the door burst open. 2 men in dark suits entered. Behind them, Victoria Cross. She looked different, unhinged. Her perfect hair was disheveled. Her eyes had a wild quality that hadn't been there before. "Did you think you'd won?" Victoria's voice was a hiss. "Did you think you could destroy everything I've built and just walk away?" Sarah grabbed the nurse call button, but Victoria knocked it away. "No one's coming to help you. I've paid off the night staff. We have exactly 15 minutes before the shift change." "What do you want?" "What I've always wanted, the collection, the evidence, everything you've found." Victoria moved closer. "You're going to sign documents transferring ownership of the Starlight Kingdom property to a holding company I control. You're going to delete every photo, every copy, every trace of what you found in that vault." "And if I refuse?" Victoria smiled. It was the most terrifying thing Sarah had ever seen. "Then I visit the NICU next. Your daughter is so small, Mrs. Mitchell, so fragile. Accidents happen in hospitals all the time." Sarah's blood turned to ice. "You wouldn't." "I've done worse for less. You have no idea what I'm capable of." Victoria pulled papers from her briefcase. "Sign now. And this all goes away." Sarah looked at the documents, looked at Victoria, looked at the 2 men blocking the door. She was trapped. Alone? Helpless? Or was she "I'll sign"? Sarah's voice was steady. "But first, I need to know something. You're not in a position to negotiate. Humor me. You're about to win. You can afford one question." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "What? Did you kill my husband?" Silence. Victoria's expression flickered. "Your husband killed himself, driving too fast, too late, too reckless." "That's not what I asked. I asked if you killed him." "Does it matter? He's dead either way." "It matters to me." Victoria stared at her for a long moment. Then she laughed, a cold, brittle sound. "Fine. You want to know? Yes, I had Daniel Mitchell killed. He was 3 days away from finding the vault. 3 days away from exposing secrets I'd spent 20 years protecting." She leaned close. "I had his brake lines cut, made it look like an accident. Just like I'll make your daughter's death look like a complication. Just like I'll make your death look like suicide once the grief becomes too much." Sarah felt something break inside her. The last hope that maybe somehow Daniel's death had been an accident. Gone. But in its place, something else grew. Something harder. Colder. More dangerous. "Thank you," Sarah said quietly. "That's all I needed to hear." Victoria frowned. "Sign the papers." "No." "Excuse me." Sarah reached under her pillow, pulled out her phone, hit stop on the recording app. "I've been recording since you walked in. Every threat, every confession, including your admission that you murdered my husband." Victoria's face went white. "That's inadmissible. You can't." "I can. Georgia is a one-party consent state. I looked it up." Sarah smiled. It was the first real smile she'd felt in weeks. "And even if it weren't, do you think the media cares about legal technicalities? This recording is already uploading to a cloud server. In 60 seconds, it'll be in the hands of every major news outlet in the country." "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Sarah held up the phone. "Watch." Victoria lunged for it. Sarah threw the phone across the room. One of the men scrambled to grab it, but the upload was complete. "It's done. Everyone will know what you did. To me, to Daniel, to everyone who ever got in your way." Victoria stood frozen. Her face cycled through emotions. Rage, disbelief, fear? "You've destroyed yourself," she whispered. "Disney will never work with you now. You've made enemies of everyone." "I've exposed a murderer. That's enough." The door burst open again. Security guards flooded in, followed by James Thomas and a man Sarah didn't recognize in an expensive suit. "Victoria Cross." The man's voice was ice. "I'm Thomas Hartley. You're under citizen's arrest for trespassing, assault, and conspiracy to commit murder. Security detain her until the police arrive." Victoria tried to run. She didn't get 3 steps before the guards had her pinned. "You can't do this," she was screaming now. "I protected this company for 30 years. Everything I did was for Disney." "What you did was for yourself." Hartley's disgust was palpable. "And it ends tonight." They dragged Victoria out. Her screams echoed down the hallway until they faded to nothing. Sarah slumped back against her pillows. Her body was shaking. The adrenaline that had kept her going was crashing hard. Hartley approached her bed. "Mrs. Mitchell, I owe you an apology that goes far beyond what I said on the phone. You knew about Victoria, about what she was capable of." "I suspected. I should have acted sooner." He shook his head. "I was a coward. I let her run wild because she got results. I didn't want to know how." "She killed my husband." "I know, and I'm more sorry than I can say." Hartley pulled an envelope from his jacket. "This doesn't make up for anything, but it's a start." Sarah opened the envelope. Inside was a check. She had to read the number 3 times before it registered. $50 million. A settlement for what was done to you, to Daniel, to your family. Hartley met her eyes. "There's also a formal agreement ceding all rights to the Stardust collection to you personally. Disney will have no claim, no control. Whatever you choose to do with Walt's legacy, it's yours." Sarah stared at the check. $50 million. More money than she'd ever imagined. A month ago, she'd had $18,000 and no hope. "Why?" She looked up at Hartley. "You could fight this, tie it up in courts for years. Why just give in?" "Well, because it's the right thing to do." He smiled sadly. "And because I listened to something Walt said in one of his interviews. He said the way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing." Hartley gestured at her. "You've done more in 2 weeks than I've done in 10 years as CEO. It's time Disney remembered how to do things right." Sarah looked at the check, at the agreement, at the man who ran the most powerful entertainment company in the world standing humbly at her hospital bedside. "There's one more thing I need." "Name it." "A full investigation into Daniel's death. Public, transparent, with all findings released to the media." Hartley nodded. "Done. And I want Victoria Cross prosecuted, not protected, not shipped off to some corporate exile where she can rebuild. I want her in prison for the rest of her life. The evidence you gathered tonight should ensure that, but I'll make sure our legal team cooperates fully with prosecutors." Sarah took a deep breath. Her body ached, her heart ached, but somewhere beneath the pain something new was growing. Peace. "Then we have a deal." She extended her hand. Hartley shook it. "Welcome to the Disney family, Mrs. Mitchell. God knows we need someone like you." The sun rose at 6:15 a.m. Sarah stood at the window of her hospital room, watching light spread across the city. She'd barely slept, but she wasn't tired. She felt alive in a way she hadn't in months. James found her there. "You should be resting." "I've rested enough. There's too much to do." "There's time. Hartley's people are handling the legal stuff. Victoria's in custody. The story's everywhere." He stood beside her. "You won, Sarah. It's over." "It's not over. It's just beginning." She turned to face him. "The collection needs to be preserved, cataloged, shared with the world the way Walt wanted. That's going to take years. You don't have to do it alone." "I know. That's why I want you there." Sarah met his eyes. "You believed in me when I was a crazy pregnant woman with a wild story about hidden treasure. You risked everything to help me fight. I need people like you." James was quiet for a moment. "Daniel was my friend. Before he was a source. Before he was a research partner, he was my friend. When he died, I blame myself. I should have warned him about Victoria, should have told him how dangerous she was. You couldn't have known." "Maybe, maybe not." He shook his head. "Either way, helping you felt like making up for failing him, like honoring his memory." "Then keep honoring it. Help me build something that matters." James smiled. "I thought you'd never ask." Elena arrived at 8:30 a.m., with Thomas close behind. They found Sarah in the NICU holding Hope against her chest. The baby was breathing on her own now the tube removed. Her color was better. Her grip on Sarah's finger was stronger. "She's beautiful." Elena's voice was thick with emotion. "What did you name her?" "Hope. Because that's what she is." "It's perfect." Elena reached out and gently touched the baby's tiny hand. Walt would have loved her. He always said children were the most important audience, the ones who hadn't forgotten how to believe in impossible things. "I want her to grow up in a world where dreams matter," Sarah said, "where people fight for what's right, where corporations can't just crush anyone who gets in their way." "That's a big dream." Walt had big dreams too. Look where they ended up. Thomas checked his phone. "The news is still exploding. Victoria's arrest is everywhere. The recording you made has been played on every network." He looked up. "You're famous, Sarah. whether you wanted it or not. I never wanted fame. I just wanted to survive. Well, you've done more than survive. You've won. Sarah looked down at her daughter, at this tiny, fragile, perfect life that had almost been taken from her. I didn't win. We all won. Daniel won. Walt won. Everyone who ever believed that truth matters more than money. She kissed Hope's forehead. And this little girl won. She's going to grow up free. That's all I ever wanted. The discharge papers came at 2:00 p.m. 3 days later. Sarah's recovery had been faster than expected. The doctors called it remarkable. Sarah called it stubbornness. Hope was still in the NICU, but the doctors were optimistic. Another week, maybe 2, and she'd be strong enough to go home. Home. Sarah didn't know where that was anymore. The motel felt temporary. The Starlight Kingdom property was still a ruin. She had $50 million in a bank account she'd barely touched and no idea what to do next. James found her packing the few belongings she'd accumulated. "Where are you going to go?" "I don't know. Find an apartment somewhere. Start planning what to do with the collection." She zipped her bag. "Figure out how to be a mother." "I have a suggestion." "What?" "Go back to Starlight Kingdom. Not to live, but to see. You've been fighting so hard to protect what's there that you haven't actually looked at it. Not properly." Sarah considered. "Dorothy Price is still around somewhere. She gave me the property. She might know things about Walt, about the vault, that she hasn't shared yet." "Exactly. And the property itself needs assessment. If you're going to do something with it, turn it into a museum or a creative center or whatever Walt envisioned you need to understand what you're working with." Sarah thought about the castle, about the vault beneath it, about the dreams locked away for 43 years waiting for someone desperate enough to find them. "Okay, let's go see what Walt really left me." They arrived at Starlight Kingdom at 4:15 p.m. The property looked different in afternoon sunlight. Still ruined, still overgrown, but somehow less ominous. Less like a graveyard and more like a garden waiting to bloom. Sarah walked through the rusted gates with James beside her. Elena and Thomas followed, having insisted on coming along for the historic occasion. "I can't believe I was here just 2 weeks ago," Sarah murmured. "It feels like a lifetime." "A lot has happened." "That's an understatement." They made their way toward the castle. Sarah's body still ached from surgery, but she barely noticed. Something was drawing her forward, a feeling she couldn't explain. The castle doors had been secured with new locks since her last visit. Thomas had the keys. Hartley's people came through, sealed everything up, posted guards at the entrance to the vault. He unlocked the doors. "They're gone now per the settlement agreement. It's all yours." Sarah stepped inside. The grand foyer was exactly as she remembered. Cracked marble. Faded murals. The ghosts of dreams that had once filled this space with joy. But now she saw it differently. Not as ruins, but as foundations. Not as decay, but as raw material for something new. "Can you imagine what this could be?" Elena whispered. "Restored. Filled with children learning to animate, artists creating new stories. Walt's vision finally realized. It's going to take years. Good things always do." Sarah walked to the center of the foyer, looked up at the cracked ceiling, looked down at the floor she'd fallen through just 2 weeks ago. "This is where it started," she said. "Right here. The floor gave way, and I fell into a secret that changed everything." "Do you want to go down to the vault?" Sarah shook her head. "Not yet. There's something else I need to do first." She walked outside through the overgrown gardens past the rusted carousel toward a small cottage at the edge of the property, Dorothy Price's home when the park was still alive. The cottage was dark, abandoned for decades like everything else, but smoke rose from the chimney. Sarah knocked. The door opened immediately as if Dorothy had been waiting. "I knew you'd come back." The old woman's voice was stronger than Sarah remembered. "I saw the news, saw what you did. You're exactly who I thought you were." "I have questions." "I'm sure you do. Come in, I'll make tea." They sat in a small kitchen that somehow still had working electricity and running water. Dorothy moved with surprising grace for a woman her age, filling a kettle and setting out cups. "Walt visited this cottage often in his final years," Dorothy said. "Sat in that very chair you're sitting in now. He'd drink tea and talk for hours about his dreams, his fears, what he wanted to leave behind." "Why did he choose this place? Out of all the properties he could have hidden the vault, why here?" "Because of my grandfather." Dorothy smiled. Harold Price was Walt's first mentor, taught him everything about animation before Walt even knew what animation was. When my grandfather died, Walt promised to take care of his family. This park was his gift to us, a way of saying thank you. But why hide the vault here? Because he trusted us, more than he trusted his own company. Dorothy's eyes grew distant. The last time Walt visited 2 weeks before he died, he sat right there and told me he'd hidden something precious in the castle, something that would matter someday. He said it was his insurance policy against forgetting. Insurance against what? Against the company becoming just another corporation, against his dreams being reduced to products, against everything he feared was already happening. Dorothy reached out and took Sarah's hand. He told me that someday someone would find the vault, someone who needed it, someone who would understand what to do with it. How did he know? He didn't. He hoped. That's all any of us can do. Dorothy squeezed her hand. You proved him right, Sarah. You proved that hope isn't foolish, that believing in impossible things isn't crazy, that dreams matter. Sarah felt tears welling up. I almost didn't buy the property. I almost drove past. I almost gave up 100 times. But you didn't. That's the point. You had every reason to quit, and you kept going. Dorothy's eyes were bright with unshed tears of her own. Walt would have loved you. He would have seen in you exactly what I see, a dreamer who refuses to stop dreaming. Sarah wiped her eyes. I want to rebuild this place, turn it into what Walt envisioned, a creative campus where anyone can learn animation, where dreams are preserved and shared, where children who could never afford Disney tickets can still touch the magic. That's a beautiful vision. Will you help me? You knew Walt. You know this property. I can't do it without people who understand what it's supposed to be. Dorothy smiled. It transformed her weathered face into something radiant. Child, I've been waiting 43 years for someone to ask me that. Of course I'll help. It's what I was born to do. They talked until sunset. Dorothy shared stories about Walt that had never been written down, memories of late-night conversations, details about the vault, about Project Stardust, about the films Walt had dreamed of making. The Rainbow King was his passion, Dorothy said. A story about a boy who could see colors no one else could see. Walt said it was about the gift of vision, about seeing beauty where others saw nothing. Why didn't the studio make it too experimental, too risky? The board wanted safe returns, not artistic adventures. Dorothy shook her head. Walt died with that story still locked in his heart, but the materials are in the vault, everything needed to finally tell it. Sarah thought about the animation cells she'd photographed, the concept art, the storyboards for films that had never existed. What if we made it? She said slowly. What if we used the original materials to create what Walt wanted? Not a Disney production, something independent, something true to his vision. Is that possible? With the settlement money, with the media attention, with people who believe in what this could be? Sarah smiled. Anything is possible. That's what Walt taught us, isn't it? Dorothy laughed. Yes, it is. The stars were out when Sarah finally left the cottage. James was waiting by the car, having given her privacy for the conversation. How did it go? She's going to help. She knows things about Walt, about the vault that could fill books. Sarah looked back at the castle, its silhouette dark against the starlit sky. This is going to work, James. I can feel it. You sound different. I am different. 2 weeks ago, I was a pregnant widow with nothing. Now I'm a mother with everything. She turned to face him. I'm going to build something here. Something that matters. Something that will last longer than I will. What about Victoria, the trial, all the legal mess that's still ahead? I'll deal with it, but I'm not going to let it define me. I'm not going to be the woman who fought Disney. I'm going to be the woman who built something better. James nodded slowly. Daniel would be proud. Sarah felt his name hit her like a physical blow. Daniel, her husband, the man who had died searching for this place. I miss him, she whispered. Every day. But I think I understand him now. Why he kept secrets. Why he risked everything. She wiped her eyes. He believed in something bigger than himself. That's not betrayal. That's love. What are you going to do now? Go back to the hospital, hold my daughter, tell her about her father. Sarah smiled through her tears. And then start building the world I want her to grow up in. They drove back in silence. But it wasn't the heavy silence of grief or the tense silence of fear. It was the peaceful silence of someone who had finally found their purpose. Sarah Mitchell had lost everything, and in losing everything she had found something far more valuable. She had found hope. Hope came home on a Tuesday morning in April. Sarah held her daughter against her chest as the nurse wheeled them out of the hospital. 3 weeks in the NICU. 3 weeks of monitors and tubes and the constant fear that something would go wrong. But hope had fought. Every day she grew stronger. Every day she proved that she was exactly what her name promised. "She's a miracle," the nurse said. "Most preemies her size take twice as long to recover. Your daughter has a warrior's spirit." Sarah looked down at Hope's face, eyes closed, tiny fingers curled against her mother's heart. "She gets it from her father." James was waiting with the car. He'd barely left Sarah's side since the confrontation with Victoria. He'd become something more than an ally now, something like family. "Ready to go home?" he asked. Sarah paused. "I don't have a home. The motel expired 3 days ago." "Actually, you do," James smiled. "Elena and Dorothy have been busy while you were in the hospital. They found a house near the Starlight Kingdom property, 3 bedrooms, furnished, already paid for the first 6 months. Sarah felt tears threatening again. She'd cried more in the past month than in her entire life. "They didn't have to do that. They wanted to. We all did." James opened the car door. "You're not alone anymore, Sarah. You have a family now. A weird, mismatched, completely unexpected family, but a family." Sarah climbed into the car, hope secure in her arms. "Then let's go home." The house was small but perfect. Yellow walls in the nursery that Elena had painted herself. A rocking chair by the window that Dorothy had brought from her cottage. Books on every shelf that James had collected from estate sales. A kitchen stocked with enough food for a month. Sarah walked through the rooms in silence. Every detail showed how much thought had gone into this. How much love. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything." Elena appeared in the doorway. "This is what family does. We take care of each other." "But you barely know me." "I know enough. I know you're brave. I know you're stubborn. I know you fought for something that matters when everyone told you it was impossible." Elena smiled. "That's the kind of person worth knowing." Sarah set Hope down in the crib. The baby stirred but didn't wake. "How do I ever repay this?" "By building what you promised. By making Walt's vision real." Elena's voice softened. "By raising that little girl to believe in dreams the way you do." Sarah looked at her daughter, at this tiny life that depended on her completely. "I will. I promise." The first challenge came at 9:30 a.m. 2 days later. Sarah was feeding Hope when her phone rang. Thomas Chen's name flashed on the screen. "We have a problem." Sarah's stomach dropped. "What kind of problem?" "Victoria Cross made bail last night. She posted $5 million and walked out of county lockup at 8 p.m. Sarah nearly dropped the phone. "That's impossible. She's charged with murder conspiracy. They don't give bail for that." "They do when you have the best lawyers money can buy and judges who owe you favors." Thomas's voice was tight with frustration. "She's under house arrest with an ankle monitor. Can't leave the state. Can't contact you directly, but she's out." "She threatened to kill my baby. She confessed to killing my husband, and she's out." "The system is broken, Sarah. It protects people with money and power. Always has." Thomas paused. "There's more." "Tell me." "Victoria's lawyers are filing a motion to suppress the recording you made. They're arguing it was obtained under duress, that their client was having a mental health episode, that nothing she said can be considered a valid confession." "That's insane. That's the legal system. If they succeed, the murder charge falls apart. She walks." Sarah felt the walls closing in. She'd thought it was over. She'd thought Victoria was finished. But the woman was like a snake. Cut off her head and she grew another. What do? We fight. We have evidence. We have witnesses. We have public opinion on our side. Thomas's voice hardened. "And we have something Victoria doesn't." "What's that?" "The truth. The truth always wins eventually. We just have to make sure eventually comes before she finds a way to destroy everything." Sarah hung up and looked at Hope. The baby was sleeping peacefully, unaware that the woman who had threatened her life was now free to plot again. "I won't let her hurt you," Sarah whispered. "I won't let anyone hurt you, ever." The security team arrived at 2:15 p.m. James had arranged it. 4 professionals who would rotate shifts around the clock. One would always be near Sarah and Hope. Another would monitor the Starlight Kingdom property. The others would track any movement from Victoria's known associates. "Is this really necessary?" Sarah asked. "Victoria Cross tried to kill you in a hospital. She's not going to stop because she's wearing an ankle bracelet." James's face was grim. "Until she's in prison for good, we take no chances." Sarah accepted the reality. Her life had become something unrecognizable. Armed guards, security protocols, The constant awareness that someone powerful wanted her dead, but she refused to live in fear. That's what Victoria wanted. That's what she wouldn't give her. Fine, security stays, but I'm not hiding. I'm going to the property tomorrow. I'm starting the rebuild. Sarah? I'm not negotiating. Hope stays here with protection. I go to work. That's the deal. James looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Daniel was right about you. You really are the stubbornest person alive. Second stubbornest, my daughter's already giving me competition. The Starlight Kingdom property felt different at 8:00 a.m. on a spring morning. Sunlight streamed through broken structures, turning rust to gold. Birds sang in the overgrown gardens. The air smelled of flowers and fresh earth and possibility. Sarah walked the grounds with Elena Dorothy and a team of architects that Thomas had hired. They mapped every structure, assessed every foundation, calculated what could be saved and what needed to be rebuilt. The castle's bones are solid, the lead architect said. Concrete foundation, steel frame. The decay is all surface level. With proper renovation, this could be operational within 18 months. What about the vault? That's actually the easiest part. Climate control is already working, just needs inspection and updating. Sarah looked at the castle, at the home of dreams that had waited 43 years for someone to wake them. I want the vault to be the heart of everything, a museum space where people can see what Walt created, touch the original materials, understand how magic is made. That's possible. We can design the restoration around it. And I want workshop spaces, studios where children can learn animation, where artists can create without corporate oversight, where the next generation of dreamers can discover what they're capable of. The architect made notes. This is going to be expensive. Even with the settlement money, you're looking at costs that could exceed $100 million over 5 years. Then we'll find more money, grants, donations, partnerships with studios that share the vision. Sarah squared her shoulders. Walt built an empire from a mouse and a dream. I can build this from a ruin and a purpose. Dorothy touched her arm. You sound like him. Walt said almost the same thing when people told him Disneyland was impossible. What did he do? He built it anyway, and he was right. The first donation came at 3:45 p.m. that same day. Sarah was reviewing architectural plans when her phone buzzed, an email from a name she didn't recognize. Dear Mrs. Mitchell, my name is Robert Chen. I am the grandson of William Chen, who worked with Walt Disney from 1952 until Walt's death. My grandfather spoke often of a secret project, something Walt was hiding to protect his true legacy. I have followed your story with great interest. What you have discovered is exactly what my grandfather described. What you are building is exactly what he hoped someone would create. I am the CEO of Pacific Animation Studios. We would like to offer our full support for the Starlight Kingdom Creative Campus. This includes an initial donation of $10 million technical expertise from our team and partnership opportunities for artists trained at your facility. Walt believed in my grandfather when no one else would. It's time for us to believe in his dream. Respectfully, Robert Chen. Sarah read the email 3 times. Then she sat down heavily on a fallen stone and cried. What is it? Elena rushed over. What's wrong? Sarah handed her the phone. Elena read the email. Her eyes went wide. $10 million. Pacific Animation. They're one of the largest independent studios in the country. William Chen's grandson, Thomas Chen's cousin. Sarah laughed through her tears. It's all connected. Everything's connected. Walt's legacy reaching out across generations. It's more than that. It's proof that what we're doing matters, that people believe in it, that this isn't just my dream anymore. Elena knelt beside her. It was never just your dream, Sarah. It was Walt's dream. Daniel's dream. Everyone who ever believed that magic should belong to everyone. Sarah wiped her eyes. Then let's make sure we don't let them down. The news of Pacific Animation's donation made headlines by 6:00 p.m. Within 48 hours, more offers poured in. Studios, foundations, individual collectors, people Sarah had never heard of sending checks for $500, $1,000, $5,000. Every donation accompanied by a note explaining why they believed in what she was building. A teacher in Iowa sent $50 and wrote, I show Disney movies to my students every year. They deserve to know the real story behind the magic. A grandmother in Japan sent $200 and wrote, my granddaughter dreams of being an animator. Give her a place to learn. An anonymous donor sent $2 million with only one message, for Walt, for Daniel, for all the dreamers who refused to quit. By the end of the first week, the project fund had grown to $47 million. more than enough to begin serious construction, but with success came complications. The call from Disney headquarters came at 10:15 a.m. on a Friday. Sarah answered expecting Thomas Hartley. Instead, a crisp female voice introduced herself. "Mrs. Mitchell, this is Amanda Foster. I'm the new Senior Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at Disney. I'm calling about a matter of mutual interest." "What matter?" "The Rainbow King, Walt's unfinished film. We understand you have the original materials in your possession." Sarah's guard went up immediately. "I do. Disney would like to produce The Rainbow King as a feature film, a tribute to Walt's legacy. We're prepared to offer substantial compensation for access to the materials." "The materials aren't for sale." "We're not asking to buy them. We're asking for a partnership. You maintain ownership. Disney provides production resources. The film gets made the way Walt intended." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "Why now?" "You had decades to make this film. Why suddenly interested?" Amanda hesitated. "Honestly, because you've made it impossible to ignore. The public knows about these materials now. They know Walt had dreams the company buried. If we don't participate in bringing them to life, we look like villains." "You are villains. Victoria Cross worked for you. She killed my husband. She tried to kill me." "Victoria Cross acted without authorization. Her actions do not represent—" "Save it. I've heard the corporate spin." Sarah's voice hardened. "If Disney wants to be part of the Rainbow King, there are conditions." "Name them." "Full creative control stays with me and the Starlight Kingdom team. Disney provides resources and distribution but doesn't touch the content." "That's unusual." "That's non-negotiable." Thomas. "What else?" "A public acknowledgement that Walt Disney's legacy was suppressed for decades. An apology to his memory and to everyone who should have seen these works." "Mrs. Mitchell, corporate apologies are complicated. Legal implications." "I don't care about complications. I care about truth." Sarah took a breath. "And one more thing. A permanent endowment for the Starlight Kingdom Creative Campus. $50 million, non-revocable." Silence on the line. "That's a significant ask." "That's what it costs to undo the damage your company did. Take it or leave it." Amanda was quiet for what felt like minutes. "I'll need to discuss this with the board." "You have until Monday. After that, I make the Rainbow King independently and Disney gets nothing but bad press." Sarah hung up. Her hands were shaking. She'd just played hardball with the most powerful entertainment company in the world. Again. James appeared in the doorway. "I heard. That was either brilliant or crazy." "Maybe both?" Sarah laughed nervously. "Is there a difference anymore?" The board's answer came at 4:30 p.m. on Monday. Amanda Foster called personally. "Mrs. Mitchell, the board has agreed to your terms. All of them." Sarah nearly dropped the phone. "All of them. Creative control, public acknowledgement, $50 million endowment. It's all yours." Amanda paused. "You're a remarkable negotiator, Mrs. Mitchell." "I'm a mother protecting her daughter's future, that's all." "Well, whatever you are, you've accomplished something no one else has. You've made Disney bend." Sarah smiled. "I had good teachers. Walt Disney, Daniel Mitchell, people who believed in impossible things." "We'll send contracts this week. Production can begin as soon as you're ready." Sarah hung up and sat in silence for a long moment. Then she walked to the nursery where Hope was sleeping. "We did it, baby girl. We actually did it." Hope stirred. Her tiny hand reached up as if grasping for something only she could see. "Your daddy would be so proud," Sarah whispered. "He died searching for this. And now, his dream is going to come true." Victoria Cross's trial began at 9:00 a.m. on a gray October morning. Sarah sat in the front row of the courtroom, Hope in her arms. The baby was 5 months old now, alert and curious, watching everything with eyes that seemed too wise for her age. Victoria sat at the defense table, her lawyers flanking her like expensive armor. She looked different than the last time Sarah had seen her. Thinner, paler, the arrogance replaced by something desperate. Their eyes met across the courtroom. Victoria's gaze flickered to Hope, and for just a moment Sarah saw something human beneath the corporate mask. Fear. Victoria Cross was afraid. The prosecution presented evidence for 3 days. Sarah's recording. Financial records linking Victoria to Marcus Reeves. Testimony from former employees about intimidation and cover-ups. Evidence that Daniel's car had been tampered with before his fatal crash. When Sarah took the stand, she told her story simply. The discovery, the threats, the hospital confrontation, Victoria's confession. "She told me she had my husband killed." Sarah said, her voice steady. She told me she would kill my daughter too if I didn't give her what she wanted. And what did you do? I recorded everything. I fought back. I refused to let her win. Victoria's lawyer tried to paint Sarah as unstable, grief-stricken, unreliable. Mrs. Mitchell, isn't it true that you were under extreme stress at the time of this alleged confrontation, that you had just undergone emergency surgery, that you were on medication? I was under stress because Victoria Cross had spent weeks trying to destroy my life. I was on medication because her actions nearly killed me and my baby. Sarah met the lawyer's eyes without flinching. But I know what I heard. I know what she confessed to, and so does everyone who's listened to that recording. The jury deliberated for 2 days. Sarah waited in the courthouse hallway, unable to eat, unable to sleep, unable to do anything but hold hope and pray. Elena sat beside her. Whatever happens, you've already won. You've exposed what she did. The whole world knows. It's not enough. She killed Daniel. She needs to pay. Justice isn't always about punishment. Sometimes it's about truth, and the truth is out there now. Nothing can change that. At 3:47 p.m. on the second day of deliberation, the jury returned. Sarah held her breath as the foreman stood. On the count of conspiracy to commit murder, we find the defendant guilty. Relief crashed over Sarah like a wave. On the count of witness intimidation, guilty. On the count of criminal conspiracy, guilty. On the count of attempted extortion, guilty. Victoria's face went white. Her lawyer scrambled to object to appeal, to do something, but it was too late. Justice had finally arrived. The judge sentenced Victoria Cross to 47 years in federal prison. No possibility of parole for 25 years. By the time she was eligible for release, she would be in her 80s. As the bailiffs led her away, Victoria looked back at Sarah one final time. Her eyes burned with hatred, but beneath it was something else. Defeat. "It's over," James said softly. Sarah watched the doors close behind her enemy. "No, it's just beginning." The Starlight Kingdom Creative Campus opened its doors at 10:00 a.m. on a perfect spring morning, 1 year after Sarah had first discovered the vault. 5,000 people waited outside the restored gates. Families who had driven hundreds of miles. Young artists clutching sketchbooks. Children wearing Mickey Mouse ears and princess dresses. Reporters from every major network. Sarah stood at the entrance with hope in her arms. Her daughter was 1 year old now, walking with wobbly determination, speaking her first words. The first word had been mama. The second had been book. "She's going to be a reader," Elena had laughed, "or an animator, or both." Now Sarah looked out at the crowd and felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. "Thank you all for coming," she said into the microphone. 1 year ago, I was a pregnant widow with $18,000 and no hope. I bought this property on impulse, not knowing what I would find. What I discovered changed everything. She gestured toward the castle behind her. Restored now. Gleaming in the morning light. The turrets reached toward blue sky. The windows sparkled like eyes opening after a long sleep. Walt Disney hid his greatest treasures here because he believed someday someone would find them. Someone who would understand that magic isn't about money or power. It's about possibility. It's about believing in impossible things. Hope squirmed in her arms. Sarah smiled and kissed her daughter's forehead. "I named my daughter Hope because that's what kept me going through the darkest days. Hope that justice would prevail. Hope that dreams could survive. Hope that one person, even with nothing, could make a difference." She turned to the castle. "This campus exists because of hope. Because Walt Disney hoped someone would find his legacy. Because my husband Daniel hoped he would discover the truth. Because thousands of you hoped that dreams belong to everyone." Sarah pulled a golden key from her pocket. In Walt's final letter, he wrote that magic isn't about profit, it's about possibility. Today we open this place to everyone who believes in that vision, to every child who wants to learn, to every artist who wants to create, to every dreamer who refuses to give up. She inserted the key into the ceremonial lock. "Welcome to Starlight Kingdom, welcome home." The gates swung open. The crowd surged forwards, filling pathways that had been empty for 40 years. Children ran toward the restored carousel. Parents studied the animation workshops. Young artists rushed toward the Vault Museum where Walt's original works were finally on display. James found Sarah in the crowd. "You did it. We did it, all of us. How does it feel?" Sarah watched a little girl about 6 years old approach one of the animation tables. A volunteer handed her a pencil. The girl began to draw, her face lit with concentration and joy. "It feels like the beginning," Sarah said. "Like everything that came before was just preparation for this." What comes next? Sarah looked at Hope, then at the castle, then at the thousands of people streaming through the gates. We keep building. We keep dreaming. We keep proving that one person can change the world if they're desperate enough to try. James smiled. Daniel would be proud. I know. Sarah felt tears threatening, but didn't try to stop them. I feel him here today, in everything we've built, everything we've accomplished. He's not gone. Not really. He lives in this place, in Hope, in every dream that gets born here. Sarah nodded. That's exactly what he would have wanted. The first class of students enrolled at 900 a.m. the following Monday. 47 young people from backgrounds that would never have given them access to animation training. Scholarship students from rural Georgia, kids from inner-city Chicago, artists from small towns across America, international students from Japan, Korea, India, Brazil. Elena led the orientation. Welcome to the Starlight Kingdom Academy. You're here because someone believed in you, because you have talent and determination and dreams worth pursuing. She gestured to the walls covered with Walt's original concept art. Be careful, man. These works were hidden for 43 years because the world wasn't ready for them, but you're ready, and it's your job to carry this legacy forward. Sarah watched from the back of the room, Hope on her hip. Look at them, she whispered to Dorothy, who had come to observe. They have no idea what's possible, what they can become. Walt would be crying right now, Dorothy said. Happy tears, the kind he shed when Disneyland opened, when Snow White premiered, when he saw his dreams coming to life in front of him. Do you think we're doing it right, what he would have wanted? Dorothy took Sarah's hand. Child, you're doing better than he could have imagined. You've created something he only dreamed about, a place where magic isn't owned, where dreams aren't controlled, where anyone can learn to make wonder. Sarah squeezed her hand. I couldn't have done it without you, without any of you. That's the point. Magic multiplies when you share it. Walt knew that. Now you know it too. The premiere of The Rainbow King took place at the Starlight Kingdom Outdoor Theater at 7:00 p.m. on a warm June evening 18 months after the campus opened. 3,000 people filled the amphitheater. Students, staff, families, media from around the world, Disney executives who had flown in for the occasion. Thomas Hartley, the Disney CEO, approached Sarah before the screening. Mrs. Mitchell, this is a remarkable evening. Mr. Hartley, thank you for making it possible. I think we both know who made this possible. He smiled, and for once it seemed genuine. You've changed things, not just at Disney, in the industry, in how people think about legacy and ownership and what art is for. I just found a treasure and refuse to let anyone bury it again. That's exactly what I mean. Most people would have taken the money and walked away. You built something. Sarah looked out at the crowd, at children sitting on parents' shoulders, at young artists who had trained at her academy, at Hope, now 2 years old, perched on James's lap in the front row. Walt believed dreams should belong to everyone. I'm just making sure they do. The lights dimmed. The screen came to life. The Rainbow King began. It was everything Walt had envisioned. A story about a boy named Oliver who could see colors no one else could see. Who was told he was strange, different, wrong. Who discovered that his unique vision was actually a gift, one that could show the world beauty it had forgotten existed. Sarah watched through tears as 43 years of waiting ended. As Walt's passion project finally reached the audience it had always deserved. When the credits rolled, there was silence, then applause, then a standing ovation that went on for 15 minutes. Hope clapped her tiny hands, not understanding why everyone was cheering, but wanting to be part of it. James lifted her up and carried her to Sarah. Mama, Hope said. Pretty. Sarah hugged her daughter tight. Yes, baby, it's very pretty, and it's ours, yours and mine, and everyone's who ever believed in impossible things. The reviews called The Rainbow King a masterpiece, a testament to artistic vision, a reminder of why Walt Disney had changed the world in the first place. It went on to win 3 Academy Awards, including Best Animated Feature. The acceptance speech was delivered by Elena, who spoke about her friendship with Walt and the 43 years she had waited to see his vision realized. This film exists because one woman refused to give up, Elena said, her voice thick with emotion. Sarah Mitchell found something precious and chose to share it with the world instead of selling it to the highest bidder. That's the lesson of The Rainbow King. That's the lesson of Walt Disney. Our dreams only matter if we give them away. The Academy rose in another standing ovation. Sarah watched from home, Hope asleep in her lap. James handed her a glass of champagne. You should be up there. No, this isn't about me. It never was. Sarah smiled. It's about Walt, about Daniel, about everyone who believed that magic belongs to everyone. You really believe that, don't you? I have to. It's the only thing that makes sense of everything that happened. The loss, the pain, the fight. She looked down at Hope's sleeping face. If it was just about me, it would have been pointless, but it was about something bigger, something that will last longer than any of us. James raised his glass. To bigger things, then. Sarah clinked her glass against his. To impossible dreams, and the people crazy enough to make them real. The letter arrived 3 years after the campus opened. Sarah found it in her mailbox on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Plain envelope, no return address. Handwriting she didn't recognize. She opened it expecting junk mail. Instead, she found a single page covered in cramped writing. Dear Mrs. Mitchell, you don't know me. My name is David Chen. I was Victoria Cross's assistant for 11 years. I did things I'm not proud of. Things that helped her hurt people, helped her suppress evidence, helped her cover up what happened to your husband. I've been in therapy since the trial, trying to come to terms with who I was, what I participated in. I'm writing because there's something you should know, something that didn't come out at trial. Your husband's death wasn't the first. Victoria had other enemies eliminated over the years, at least 3 that I know of. People who got too close to secrets she was protecting. I've documented everything I know. Names, dates, methods. I've sent copies to the FBI and the Department of Justice, but I wanted you to know first, because you deserve to understand the full scope of what you were fighting, and because you need to be careful. Victoria still has allies. People who believe she was wronged. People who might want revenge. I'm sorry for my part in all of this. I'm sorry I didn't come forward sooner. I hope someday you can forgive me. David Chen. Sarah's hands trembled as she read the letter again. 3 other people killed. Victoria's reach extended even further than anyone knew, and she still had allies. Sarah looked at the campus through her office window, at children running between workshops, at artists creating in studios filled with light, at the castle standing proud against the afternoon sky. She had built something beautiful, something that mattered, something worth protecting, and apparently the fight wasn't over yet. Sarah picked up the phone and called Thomas Chen. I need to talk to you. We have a problem. Thomas Chen arrived at 7:15 p.m. that same evening. Sarah handed him the letter without a word. She watched his face as he read, watched the color drain from his cheeks, watched his jaw tighten with each line. 3 other people. His voice was barely above a whisper. She killed 3 other people. And she still has allies, people who want revenge. Thomas set the letter down. His hands were shaking. We need to increase security. Contact the FBI. Make sure this David Chen is legitimate and not some kind of trap. I already called the FBI. They're sending agents tomorrow morning. Sarah paced the room. Hope was with Elena at the main house, safely away from whatever was about to happen. But that's not what scares me, Thomas. What does... The fact that Victoria has been in prison for 2 years and still has people willing to act on her behalf. What kind of hold does she have on them? What did she promise? Thomas was quiet for a moment. Victoria Cross built her career on leverage, secrets, compromising information about people in powerful positions. He met Sarah's eyes. If she has allies still working for her, it's because she's still holding something over their heads. Then we need to find out what? How? Sarah picked up her phone. We start with David Chen. He was her assistant for 11 years. If anyone knows where the bodies are buried, it's him. The meeting with David Chen took place at 10:00 a.m. 2 days later in a secure conference room arranged by the FBI. He was smaller than Sarah expected. Mid-30s, thin, with the nervous energy of a man who hadn't slept well in years. His eyes darted around the room as if expecting someone to burst through the door at any moment. Thank you for agreeing to meet, Sarah said. I should have come forward years ago, during the trial, before. David's voice cracked. But I was scared. Victoria had files on me. Things I did when I was young and stupid. She said if I ever talked, she'd destroy my life. What changed from therapy and watching what you built? He gestured vaguely toward the window. I saw the campus on the news. Saw those kids learning to animate. Saw the Rainbow King win at the Oscars. His eyes filled with tears. I realized I'd spent my whole career helping someone tear down dreams. It was time to help someone build them instead. Sarah leaned forward. The letter mentioned Victoria still has allies, people who might want revenge. What do you know about them? David swallowed hard. There's a network, people Victoria placed in positions of power over the years. Politicians, executives, law enforcement. She had something on all of them. Made sure they owed her. Names. I don't know all of them. She kept that information compartmentalized. David pulled a flash drive from his pocket. But I have this. It's everything I could access from her personal files before I left. Financial records, communications, enough to start connecting dots. Thomas took the flash drive. Why didn't you give this to the FBI? I did, but I wanted Mrs. Mitchell to have a copy too. David met Sarah's eyes. Because the FBI is slow. They'll take months to analyze this, and Victoria's people won't wait that long. Sarah felt ice spreading through her chest. What do you mean? I mean I've heard things. Whispers from people still connected to her network. David's voice dropped. They're planning something. Something big. Something to hurt you and everything you've built. When? I don't know exactly, but soon. Within weeks, maybe days. Sarah stood abruptly. Then we don't have time to wait for the FBI. We need to find out who these people are and stop them ourselves. The investigation moved fast. James worked his media contacts digging into the backgrounds of everyone connected to Victoria's career. Thomas hired private investigators to trace the financial records on David's flash drive. Elena reached out to old Disney colleagues who might have witnessed Victoria's machinations over the years. Within 72 hours, they had 3 names. Senator Richard Halloway, a Georgia politician who had received suspicious campaign contributions traced to shell companies Victoria controlled. Margaret Wu, a federal judge who had ruled favorably in several cases involving Disney interest and whose son had received a full scholarship to a prestigious university courtesy of a foundation Victoria secretly funded. And most disturbing of all, Chief Michael Torres of the local police department that had jurisdiction over Starlight Kingdom. The police chief. Sarah stared at the file in disbelief. The man responsible for protecting this campus is in Victoria's pocket. His daughter was arrested for drug possession 5 years ago, Thomas explained. The charges disappeared, the records were sealed, and the arresting officer retired early with a very generous pension from a Disney subsidiary. So if something happens here, if Victoria's people try something, the local police won't help us. They might actively work against us. Sarah felt sick. She had built this campus believing she was creating something safe, something protected. Now she was learning that the rot went deeper than she'd ever imagined. What do? We go public. James's voice was firm. We expose all 3 of them, release the evidence, let the media and the public hold them accountable, and if they retaliate before we can, then we make sure we're ready. The attack came at 3:30 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. Sarah was jolted awake by her phone screaming with emergency alerts. She grabbed it heart-pounding and saw a message from the campus security system. Fire alarm activated. Vault building. All personnel respond. She was out of bed and running before the message finished loading. The vault. Where Walt's collection was stored. Where 43 years of dreams waited for the world. Sarah drove like a woman possessed. The 3-minute journey felt like 3 hours. When she arrived, flames were visible through the vault building's windows. Fire trucks were already on scene, but they weren't moving. Why aren't they doing anything? Sarah screamed at the nearest firefighter. Orders from the chief. We're supposed to wait for structural assessment before... The building is burning. Walt Disney's life work is in there. Ma'am, I'm sorry, but we have to follow protocol. Sarah didn't wait. She ran toward the building. Someone grabbed her arm. Chief Torres himself, his face hard in the flickering light. Mrs. Mitchell, you need to stay back. This area is dangerous. You're letting it burn on purpose. Sarah yanked her arm free. Victoria put you up to this, didn't she? This is her revenge. Torres's expression flickered. I don't know what you're talking about. I know about your daughter. I know about the sealed records. I know Victoria owns you. Sarah stepped closer. But if you let that building burn, if you destroy what's inside, I will make sure the whole world knows exactly who you are and what you've done. Torres's face went pale. You're bluffing. Try me. For a long moment they stared at each other. Flames crackled behind them. Smoke rose into the night sky. The future of everything Sarah had built hung in the balance. Then Torres turned to his firefighters. What are you waiting for? Put that fire out. Now. The firefighters moved. Hoses sprayed. Water arced through the air. Sarah watched as they battled the flames, her heart in her throat. The vault's exterior walls were fireproof, designed to protect the collection from exactly this kind of attack. But fire was unpredictable. Fire didn't follow rules. At 5:47 a.m., the last flame was extinguished. Sarah pushed through the police line and entered the vault building. The smell of smoke was overwhelming. Water dripped from every surface. But the inner vault door stood intact. The climate control system had automatically sealed at the first sign of fire. She entered her code. The door opened. Inside, Walt's collection waited exactly as she had left it. Animation cells, concept art, the original materials for films that had changed the world and films that the world had never seen, untouched. Sarah sank to her knees in the middle of the vault and wept. The investigation revealed the truth by 2:00 p.m. that afternoon. The fire had been started by an accelerant poured around the vault building's exterior. Security cameras captured a figure in dark clothing approaching at 3:15 a.m. The figure's face was obscured, but their movements were purposeful. Professional. Arson, the FBI agent confirmed. Definitely deliberate. We're analyzing the accelerant now. And Chief Torres? He's being questioned. Based on the evidence you provided, he's looking at obstruction of justice charges at minimum. The agent paused. Mrs. Mitchell, I have to ask, how did you know he was compromised? Someone warned me, someone who used to work for Victoria Cross. David Chen. Yes. The agent nodded slowly. Mr. Chen has been very helpful. His information has led to the arrests of Senator Holloway and Judge Wu as well. Victoria's network is collapsing. Sarah should have felt triumph. Instead, she felt exhausted, drained. The constant fighting, the endless threats, the weight of protecting something precious in a world that seemed determined to destroy it. Will it ever stop? She asked quietly. Will there ever be a time when I don't have to worry about someone trying to tear this down? The agent was quiet for a moment. Honestly, probably not entirely. You've built something that challenges powerful interests. There will always be people who resent that. He met her eyes. But you've also built something that inspires millions. For every person who wants to destroy what you've created, there are thousands who will fight to protect it. Sarah looked out the window at the campus. Students were gathering despite the morning's chaos drawn by the news wanting to help. Artists who had trained here, children who had discovered their dreams here, families who had found magic here. Then I'll keep fighting, she said, for as long as it takes. Victoria Cross died in prison at 4:23 p.m. on a gray November afternoon 3 months after the fire. Heart attack, the official report said. Natural causes for a woman her age. But Sarah knew better. Victoria had been healthy as a horse, had sworn she would outlive everyone who had opposed her. The truth Sarah suspected was simpler and darker. Victoria's network had collapsed. Her power had evaporated. The leverage she'd held over people for decades was now public record. She had nothing left. And Victoria Cross was not the kind of woman who could survive having nothing. Sarah received the news while playing with Hope in the backyard of their home. Her daughter was 5 years old now, fierce and curious with Daniel's eyes and Sarah's stubborn chin. Mama, why do you look sad? Hope asked, sensing the change in her mother's mood. Sarah knelt down to her daughter's level. Someone I used to know passed away, baby. Were they nice? Sarah thought about the question for a long moment. No, they weren't nice. They hurt a lot of people, including your daddy. She took Hope's small hands in hers. But they're gone now, and that means we don't have to be scared anymore. Hope considered this as with the gravity only a 5-year-old could muster. Good. I don't like being scared. Neither do I, baby. Neither do I. Sarah hugged her daughter tight and let the tension of 4 years finally begin to release. It was over. Truly over. Now, she could focus on building instead of fighting. The Starlight Kingdom Creative Campus celebrated its 5th anniversary at 10:00 a.m. on a perfect spring morning. 10,000 people filled the grounds. Students past and present. Artists who had launched careers from these workshops. Families who had made pilgrimages from around the world. Media from every continent. Sarah stood at the podium in front of the Castle Hope beside her and looked out at what 5 years of dreams had created. 400 students had graduated from the academy. 12 feature films had been produced using materials from the vault. $100 million in scholarships had been distributed to young artists who couldn't afford traditional education. The campus had expanded to include satellite locations in Los Angeles, Tokyo, and London. 5 years ago, Sarah began, I stood in this exact spot with $18,000, a newborn baby, and a collection of dreams that had been hidden for nearly half a century. I didn't know if what I was attempting was possible. I didn't know if anyone would believe in a vision created by a man who died before I was born. She paused, collecting herself. Today I know the answer. You believed. Millions of you. Artists and dreamers and families and children who understood that magic belongs to everyone. You made this possible. Every donation, every visit, every time you shared our story with someone who needed to hear it. Sarah reached down and lifted Hope into her arms. Her daughter waved at the crowd, delighted by the attention. "This is Hope. She's 5 years old. She's never known a world without Starlight Kingdom. She's grown up believing that dreams matter, that one person can make a difference, that impossible things happen every day if you're brave enough to try." Sarah looked at her daughter, at the future of everything she'd built. That's Walt Disney's real legacy, not the movies or the theme parks or the merchandise. The belief that wonder is worth fighting for, that magic multiplies when you share it, that the best treasures aren't found in vaults, they're found in the people brave enough to keep dreaming. She set Hope down and gestured to the castle behind her. "Today we're announcing the next phase of Starlight Kingdom, a new initiative called Project Hope named after my daughter. Free animation education for every child in America who wants it. Mobile studios that will travel to underserved communities. Partnerships with schools in 50 countries. By 2030, we will have reached 1 million young artists." The crowd erupted, applause that seemed to shake the ground. Walt Disney once said that all our dreams can come true if we have the courage to pursue them. He was right, but I'd add one thing. Sarah looked at James, at Elena, at Thomas, at Dorothy, at all the people who had fought beside her. Our dreams can come true if we have the courage to share them. If we remember that magic isn't meant to be hoarded or controlled or sold to the highest bidder. It's meant to be given away, freely, generously, to everyone who needs it. She took Hope's hand. "Welcome to the next chapter of Starlight Kingdom. Welcome to the future of dreams." The gates opened. The crowd surged forward. 10,000 people becoming part of something larger than themselves. And Sarah Mitchell, who had once had nothing, watched with tears streaming down her face as the impossible became real. The letter arrived on Hope's 10th birthday. Sarah found it in the mail among the birthday cards and packages. Plain envelope, no return address. Handwriting that made her heart stop. Daniel's handwriting. She tore it open with trembling hand. "My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, then you found it. You found the vault. You found Walt's legacy. And somehow, impossibly, you're still standing. I wrote this letter 3 days before I planned to search the final location on my list. I knew I was close. I also knew that getting close to something this valuable meant getting close to danger. I want you to know that everything I did for you. For our daughter. For the future I wanted to give you both. I know I kept secrets. I know I lied about the money, about the research, about where I spent my nights. I'm sorry for that. But I couldn't tell you the truth because I couldn't put you at risk. The people guarding Walt's secret were dangerous. If they knew you were involved, they would have come after you too. I hoped I would find the vault and come home a hero. I hoped I would be able to explain everything, to show you what I'd been working toward, to see the look on your face when you understood. But if you're reading this, that didn't happen. So let me tell you now what I should have told you 1,000 times. You are the strongest person I've ever known. Whatever you've faced since I've been gone, I know you've faced it with courage. Whatever you've built, I know it's beautiful. Whatever you've become, I know it's extraordinary. I loved you from the moment I met you. I loved you more every day we were together. And wherever I am now, I'm still loving you. I always will. Tell our daughter about me. Tell her that her daddy was a dreamer who believed in impossible things. Tell her that she comes from people who never gave up, no matter how hard things got. And tell her that magic is real, that dreams come true, that the universe bends toward wonder if you're brave enough to reach for it. Thank you for being my dream, Sarah. Thank you for making every moment of my life worth living. All my love, forever. Daniel P.S. The combination to the vault is the day I stopped dreaming. Walt wrote that. But here's the thing, I never stopped dreaming, not even at the end. The dream just changed. It became you. It became our daughter. It became everything I knew you would build after I was gone. That's the secret Walt wanted us to understand. Dreams don't die. They transform. They grow. They pass from one heart to another, gathering strength with each person who believes. You are my dream now, Sarah. You and Hope. Forever. Sarah read the letter 7 times. She didn't know how it had reached her. Daniel must have given it to someone he trusted with instructions to deliver it if he didn't return. Perhaps a colleague. Perhaps a friend. Perhaps David Chen, who had spent years atoning for his role in Daniel's death. It didn't matter. What mattered was that Daniel had known. He'd known he might not survive. He'd known Sarah might have to finish what he started. And he'd believed in her completely. Sarah walked to the nursery that had once been Hope's, but was now a study filled with Daniel's drawings and designs. She placed the letter in a frame next to his photograph. I did it, she whispered. I found it. I built it. I kept the dream alive. The photograph seemed to smile back at her. And our daughter is everything you hoped she would be. She's brave and stubborn, and she believes in impossible things, just like you." Sarah touched the frame gently. "Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for giving me something worth fighting for. Thank you for being my dream, too." She wiped her tears and walked outside where Hope was playing in the garden. "Mama?" Hope ran to her face bright with birthday excitement. "Is it time for cake yet?" Sarah laughed and scooped her daughter into her arms. "Almost, baby, but first I have something to show you." "What?" "A letter from your daddy. He wrote it a long time ago for this exact moment. For your 10th birthday. For the person you've become." Hope's eyes went wide. "Really, Daddy wrote to me?" "He did. He wanted you to know how much he loved you, how proud he is of who you are." Hope was quiet for a moment. Then she hugged Sarah tight. "I miss him, Mama, even though I never met him." "I know, baby. I miss him too." Sarah held her daughter close. "But he's not really gone. He's in this place we built. He's in every dream we help come true. He's in you every time you're brave or stubborn or believe in something impossible." Like magic. Exactly like magic. Hope pulled back and looked at her mother with Daniel's eyes. "Then let's make more magic, Mama. That's what he'd want, right?" Sarah smiled through her tears. "That's exactly what he'd want." The Starlight Kingdom Creative Campus celebrated its 20th anniversary on a day that Sarah Mitchell would remember for the rest of her life. 100,000 people filled the grounds. Students who had graduated 2 decades ago, now industry leaders. Children who had visited as toddlers, now bringing their own children. Artists from around the world whose careers had been launched from these workshops. Hope Mitchell, now 25 years old, stood at the podium in front of the castle. She had her father's artistic talent and her mother's fierce determination. She had graduated from the academy at 18, created her first feature film at 22, and was now the creative director of the campus her mother had built. 20 years ago, Hope said, her voice carrying across the crowd, "My mother stood in this exact spot with nothing but a dream and a baby she'd named after what kept her going through the darkest days. She had lost her husband. She had lost her home. She had lost everything except her belief that magic was worth fighting for." Hope looked at Sarah, who sat in the front row with Elena, now 93 but still sharp as ever. Today, Starlight Kingdom has trained over 50,000 young artists. We've produced 47 feature films. We've built campuses on 6 continents. We've proven what Walt Disney believed and what my mother fought to protect, that dreams belong to everyone. Hope held up a golden key. "This morning, I have the honor of announcing the completion of our most ambitious project yet, the Walt Disney Global Dream Network, a partnership with educational institutions in 150 countries to bring animation training to every child on Earth, no matter where they live, no matter what they can afford, no matter who tells them their dreams are impossible." The crowd erupted. "My father died searching for Walt's legacy. My mother nearly died protecting it. But they both understood something that took me years to learn. The point isn't the treasure. It's what you do with it. The point isn't the dream. It's who you share it with." Hope descended from the podium and walked to her mother. She knelt beside Sarah's chair and took her hands. "Thank you, Mama, for everything, for finding the vault, for fighting when everyone told you to give up, for raising me to believe that one person can change the world." Sarah cupped her daughter's face. "You've already changed it, baby, more than I ever could. We changed it together. You, me, Dad, Walt, everyone who believed." Hope smiled. "That's the real magic, isn't it? Not what one person does. What we all do together." Sarah pulled her daughter into a hug. "Your father would be so proud." "He is proud. I can feel him here today, in everything we've built." They stood together, mother and daughter, as the crowd continued to cheer around them. 20 years of dreams made real. 20 years of fighting for what mattered. 20 years of proving that magic multiplies when you share it. Elena made her way to them, moving slowly but steadily with her cane. "Walt told me something once," she said, her voice thin but clear. "The night before he died, he said the greatest legacy isn't what you create, it's who you inspire to keep creating after you're gone." She looked at Sarah, then at Hope. "You've both done that. You've inspired millions. You've created something that will outlast all of us." "We couldn't have done it without you," Sarah said. "Without everyone who believed." "That's exactly the point," Elena smiled. "Magic isn't a solo act. It's a collaboration. It always has been." Dorothy Price, who had turned 97 last month, joined them in her wheelchair. Her mind was still sharp, her eyes still bright with the wonder that had seen her through 8 decades. My grandfather built this place to create joy, Dorothy said. Walt used it to hide his dreams. Sarah turned it into something greater than either of them imagined. She reached out and took Hope's hand. And now you'll take it further still. Hope squeezed the old woman's hand. I have good teachers. You have good instincts. Dorothy's eyes twinkled. And your father's stubbornness, that's more important than any lesson. The five of them stood together as the sun climbed higher, founder and guardian and inheritors of a legacy that had started with a mouse and a dream and grown into something that touched every corner of the world. What happens now? Hope asked. Sarah looked at the castle, at the crowd streaming through the gates, at the children running toward workshops where they would discover talents they never knew they had. Now we keep building, keep dreaming, keep sharing. She smiled at her daughter. That's what we've always done. That's what we'll always do. Hope nodded. Then let's get to work. The letter was discovered in Walt Disney's original Esque at 3:15 p.m. on the 30th anniversary of the campus opening. Hope found it while supervising the relocation of certain artifacts to a new museum wing. A hidden drawer tight within that no one had noticed in 50 years. A sealed envelope with handwriting she recognized from decades of studying the man's work. She opened it with trembling hands. To whoever finds this final message, if you're reading this, then my experiment worked. You found the vault. You shared what was inside. You proved that dreams can survive corporate control, personal tragedy, and the passage of time. But I have one more secret to share. The vault you found wasn't the only one. There are others, hidden in places I chose carefully over my final years. Each contains different treasures, different stories, different pieces of my heart. I scattered them across the world because I wanted magic to be found everywhere. I wanted children in every country to have the chance to discover something wonderful. I wanted the joy to be multiplied, not concentrated. You've done so much with what you found. Now it's time to do more. Look for the signs I left. A mouse hidden in an unexpected place. A castle sketched on a forgotten wall. A story that doesn't quite make sense until you dig deeper. The treasure hunt isn't over. It's just beginning. And whoever you are, whatever year you're reading this, know that I believed in you before you were born. I knew someone would find my dreams and set them free. I knew the magic would multiply. Thank you for proving me right. Keep dreaming, Walt. Hope read the letter 3 times. Then she ran to find her mother. Sarah, now 70 years old, but still fierce, still stubborn, still believing in impossible things, read Walt's final message with tears streaming down her face. Other vaults, she whispered. He hid more treasures, all over the world. We have to find them, Mama. All of them. Sarah looked at her daughter, at the woman who had grown from a premature baby fighting for survival in a NICU to a creative force who had touched millions of lives. No, Sarah said slowly. We don't find them. We help others find them. What do you mean? We share this letter. We share the clues Walt left. We invite the world to join the treasure hunt. Sarah smiled. That's what he wanted all along. Not for one person to control his legacy, for everyone to be part of discovering it. Hope stared at her mother. Then she laughed. You're right. Of course you're right. That's so perfectly Walt. And it's so perfectly us. Sarah took her daughter's hand. We've spent 30 years protecting one vault. Now we get to spend the rest of our lives helping the world find all the others. The magic multiplies. It always does, when you share it. Mother and daughter walked out of the museum together into sunlight that seemed brighter than it had any right to be. Around them, the campus hummed with life. Children learning, artists creating, dreams being born every minute of every day. Sarah stopped at the base of the castle and looked up at its gleaming turrets. Thank you, Walt, she said softly, for trusting someone desperate, for believing that magic was worth hiding, for knowing that someday someone would find it and set it free. The wind picked up rustling through the gardens. For just a moment, Sarah could have sworn she heard carousel music, faint, distant, the echo of dreams that had waited decades to be shared. Then Hope took her arm. Ready, Mama? Sarah Mitchell looked at her daughter, at the campus they had built, at the future stretching out before them filled with treasures still waiting to be discovered. Ready? They walked forward together into whatever came next. And somewhere in a place beyond time and memory, Walt Disney smiled. His dreams had found exactly the right hands. His magic had multiplied beyond anything he had imagined. And the greatest treasure of all, the belief that wonder is worth fighting for, would now pass to generations he would never meet but had always believed in. That was his true legacy, not animation cells or concept art or hidden vaults, but hope. Endless, stubborn, world-changing hope. The kind that starts with one desperate person believing in impossible things. The kind that never ever dies. Because magic isn't something you find, it's something you become when you refuse to stop dreaming. And Sarah Mitchell, who had once had nothing, had become magic itself.